state, or if it's absolutely against it, because some people quite like the idea. The young, those between 20 and 30 years old in Canada, seem to quite like the idea. So we'll be heading to that, and we're going to be talking about US aid being stopped, and whether we think we should do the same here or not.
Yeah, we should. Good idea.
Well, it's not my idea, it's just a question.
I like that idea. Well, that sounds like a crackerjack show for you, everybody. Stay tuned to Petrie Hosken. She'll take you through till 1 a.m. Don't forget to call her on 03444991000. You've been an amazing audience. I've been an average host, and I'll be back tomorrow with more of the same, so you better be there, 7 p.m. Look forward to it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening to you. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here, as ever, on a Monday, with you until 1 o'clock. So, what have we got coming up? Well, it's a busy show, actually. She says, trying to get out of her microphone. There we go. The microphone dropped. Sorry. What we're talking about at midnight, which is the phone-in hour. It is the only hour on this station now where you get to have your say, where you get to talk back. I know you can call other shows, but they fit you in sporadically. This is a full hour of conversation, and it's a full hour where I want to hear your voices. And we're talking about US aid after the Trump administration, or rather it seems like Elon Musk, who has incredible power for somebody with no really official oversight, has decided to shut down US aid and shut down the 40 billion foreign aid money. The entrepreneur said the agency is beyond repair. Now, I have a couple of questions about that. How can somebody like Musk really understand it? And also, look what he did to Twitter. And also, how can he know how bad or good it is in a couple of days? I mean, it seems to me like the decision was already made to shut it down before it was shut down. He just said it wasn't just a worm in an apple or something. It was a whole ball of worms. But how does he actually know that? Anyway, that aside, I do want to talk to you about aid and whether you think it is an important tool by Western countries. Now, there's a lot of things that the US will lose out on if aid isn't repackaged and given out again. And that is the sort of soft power that is in getting into those dark corners of the world and figuring out what's going on, keeping an eye on your enemies, keep your enemies close, remember that. Or do you think that actually that's what we need to do? Just shut down our aid programme completely. Do you have any concern for those people who rely on it? Do you have any concern for, I don't know, the water or the education that people in other countries are getting to try to make those countries better? Or do you just think, look, if you can't afford it, we can't do it? So I'd love to hear from you regarding aid and whether, I mean, ours is about 12, 13 billion a year. It is a drop in the ocean. It is not much. In fact, US aid at 40 billion is a drop in the ocean. It's barely nothing when you consider the amount of debt that America is carrying at the moment in the trillions. So is this just a mean, spiteful thing to do, or do you think that it is the right thing to do? I'd love to hear your views, your opinions, what you think we should do with our aid budget. Give me a call. 0344 499 1000. You can message me as well if you put the word talk and then your message to 87222. Do you support Trump and Musk in this act, or do you think that it wasn't as smart as they think it is? It'd be lovely to hear from you. I'd love to hear from you about that. Plus, in between 11 and 12, we're going to be talking to Vincent Moss, former political editor. He'll be in the studio to go through the newspapers for you for tomorrow. Also, we're going to be looking at, on this occasion, some Canadian papers, because I thought that might be quite interesting as well. And going forward this week, we're going to be looking at some American papers, just to see how they're reacting to Trump and see if they match up with what we're saying here in the UK. So we'll be doing that, just to let you know. We're going to be catching up with Timmy Alexis Carrington-Ward. We're doing this feature on these weight loss drugs. Now, Timmy has gone through his first month and he's had his first weigh-in. You'll be surprised by the results. I was, knowing the man, but surprised by the results and the journey so far. So if you're thinking of taking one of these weight loss drugs, you're going to want to hear what Timmy has got to say. A month in, he's gone up a gear now into a different bracket of the injections, so we'll find out how he's dealing with that as well. Plus, we're heading off to LA to talk to Caroline Faraday about the Grammy Awards, winners, losers, and all the gossip from the Grammys, the Oscars of music. But before that, are we too dumb for democracy? I think I love that title of that book. I'll tell you more about that in a moment. But Trump and Trudeau, now they've had a chat now about these tariffs. And Donald Trump, if you remember, when he was asked in the Oval Office, is there anything these countries can do to stop these tariffs? He said, no, I'm going ahead with the tariffs. Well, that objectively is not true, right? Because Mexico gave Trump what he wanted, and that is 10,000 troops on the southern border, an assurance about drugs and things like that coming into America. So he's happy to suspend the tariffs because he got what he wants. So are these a bargaining tool or blackmail? Now, with Canada, he's just finished talking to Trudeau, and Trudeau has confirmed that Donald Trump has suspended those 25% tariffs on Canadian goods, 10% on Canadian fuel, for 30 days. But what will Canada have to give Trump? And is this capitulating to Trump? I mean, nobody wants a trade war. Nobody wins in a trade war. Also, Donald Trump keeps on reiterating that he wants Canada to be the 51st state. And some people might go, oh, he's only joking. I think we have to by now, no matter how bonkers it may seem, take Donald Trump at his word. So would Canada ever give in to the United States of America and become Kanika? I don't know what they'd call it. Kanika. It's quite a nice name. Let's talk now to the author of the book that I just read that title from, Too Dumb for Democracy, David Moscrop, who is a Canadian political columnist and author of that fabulously named book. David, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Now, look, so we know now that the tariffs have been delayed for 30 days. Trump seemed very pleased with himself. What has your outgoing boss had to deal with Trump over?
Everything. Well, the first time around, quite a bit. You'll recall that we had a free trade agreement with the United States from the early 1990s until Trump wanted to renegotiate it in his first term. We renegotiated that. Then he tore it up and wanted to start a trade war. And Trudeau, on his way out, has said, well, we're going to have to give them something. And so a few weeks ago, they started working on a border plan that involved more money for the border, involved some helicopters and drones to patrol for illegal crossers and for fentanyl. And effectively, the pause that we've seen today for a month is a reiteration of that plan. There's really not a lot of new stuff in it. And they're going to hear 10,000. They're going to hear that number a lot in the days to come. That's, how many people are going to go to the border to patrol. But the wording is actually quite tricky. He says 10,000 people who are either there or going to be there. And if you include the 8,500 Border Patrol officials who are already there, we might actually just see a very small increase of 1,500. So in effect, Canada for the short term has given very little, things we're going to give anyway, for a bit of a reprieve.
Okay, but the thing that fascinates me, and I don't particularly understand, is that about 1% of the fentanyl and 1% of illegal border crossings come across the northern border. And yet the tariff is the same as on the southern border, where we know that leaks like a sieve. So what was the game plan here? What is the game plan? I mean, is this to I don't know, to wreck the Canadian economy so that you've got no choice but to become Kanika, or whatever he wants to call you, as the 51st state?
Well, I keep, Canada's a rather liberal country, and I keep joking that if you're a Republican, do you really want to admit another California to the Union, another blue state with 30 or 40 million people? Is that really in your interest? I don't think so. But as you mentioned at the top, the talk about the 51st state is actually very old talk. Trump brought this up in his first term. We didn't find it funny then. We definitely don't find it funny now, but we treat it as a bit of a joke, as a kind of a goading for a period of time, but less so now. Now we're starting to take it more seriously because he keeps repeating it, and it sounds an awful lot like the goal is to devastate the country so that he can annex us with quote unquote economic force, as he said before. So that's a serious problem here. And the other problem is the goalposts keep shifting. He wakes up one day and it's about the border. He wakes up another day and it's about fentanyl. He wakes up a third day and it's about not allowing U.S. banks to operate here, even though we do. And then it's about the trade deficit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the goalposts keep shifting. And here we're just looking and saying, well, then what are we meant to do? Because we don't even really know what the rules of this game are. He's just making them up as he goes. And so as you can imagine, it's been deeply, deeply frustrating for day-to-day Canadians. And I can only imagine what government officials are thinking as they try to navigate this.
Now, you've also got the situation where Trudeau is leaving. He's not got long left in post. So whoever it is that takes over has got to bear all of this in mind. They can't be somebody, it can't just be a nice, we know your reputation for being nice people, lovely people. It can't just be a nice Canadian, right? This has got to be somebody with a backbone of steel who can look Trump in the eye and go, keep your hands off Canada. Yeah,
you've got to come in elbows up. And right now, the presumptive incoming prime minister is incidentally Mark Carney, who was the governor of the Bank of England for a period of time.
We liked him.
And he, you know, he's a remarkable human being.
Yeah.
He's got his flaws. I've got plenty of criticisms that I could level, but you know, the man was the governor of both the Bank of Canada and then later the Bank of England. He obviously knows what he's doing, but Trump is mercurial is the kind of kind word we use for it. I've got less kind words we can share off air sometime, but mercurial is the kind of kind word. So it's very tough to negotiate with that. And Carney's never been elected, so he's coming in day one and has got to figure out how to deal with this. If not, Chrystia Freeland, the former finance minister and deputy prime minister, is the second choice, probably. It's the race between the two of them. But again, they're a month out of office, and they're going to have to figure out this on day one. And you can bet the U.S. administration knows this. And if you don't think that's bad enough, we also have, presumably, an election coming in April or May, at the very late in October. So not only do we not know who the prime minister is going to be in the next couple of weeks, we don't know who the prime minister will be after that in the weeks and months to come.
And the other thing is, with Mark Carney, and we did appreciate him in his role at the Bank of England, or at least I did, he plays by the rules, right? He's a very smart guy. He understands the rule book, and he sticks to the rules. That's not going to wash with Donald Trump. He doesn't have rules. And that might be a sticking point for Mark Carney, because as smart as he is, if you play by a rule book, which we're all meant to on this globe, right? And somebody's there going, now that it's Trump's world and you all just happen to live in it. How is Mark Carney or any prime minister going to navigate that? Yeah,
and if the world is living in Trump's world, we're living in his basement, or I guess for the geographical metaphor to hold, his attic. We're there. We've got the world's largest undefended border. They're our defense umbrella. They're our top trade partner. We're the top trade partner for 36 U.S. states. I mean, these countries are deeply, deeply integrated economically, politically, militarily, culturally. We pop over across the border for a weekend the way that Europeans would hop on a train and pop over to another country for a couple of days, right? They were deeply integrated. And now you've got this world of institutionalists like Carney and arsonists like Trump. And those are incompatible worlds. And so what a lot of us have been arguing here is, you know what, we can't rely on the United States like we used to. We can't rely on that special relationship like we used to. We need to diversify our trade, defense, and diplomatic relationships, because we can't have all our eggs in one basket. So we need to look to the EU. We need to look to South America. We need to look to Asia and say, well, we just can't simply rely on the U.S. as we have in the past. And I think that's the game we got to play, is to say to Trump, you know what, we're not even going to play your game. We're going to play a different game in the long term. But in the short term, that still creates a lot of pain, because it takes a long time to diversify properly.
I mean, look, a big market for Canada was Russia, right? And Russia, now you've got some of the most significant sanctions against Russia. That's the only country I can see benefiting from a trade war between America and Canada, is potentially Russia, because if you've got to somehow supplement your economy, you might turn back to the bear to try and fortify your economy. Could we ever see that from Canada?
I would say right now, U.S. popularity is plummeting in this country. We're booing the national anthem at sports events. Russia remains slightly less popular than that. It's a big ask, but I do think you could see a turn to the EU, a turn to even China. I'd say China before Russia. China is a major trade partner with Canada, especially on certain things like canola oil. It's a major market for us. So you could see a sort of a rapprochement there. And in that sense, Trump may have, or may be playing a very counterproductive game, because if the goal is to undermine China, this is going to drive countries to China. And it's also worth noting that we do have a bunch of trade agreements with countries around the world. We just aren't using them to the extent that we're using our trade with the United States. And of course we're not, because they're next door, right? If you're going to go, if you need a cup of sugar, it's a lot easier to walk across the road and get it from your neighbor than to drive across town to get it from someone else. So we're walking across the road. But what happens when that road gets torn up? Or what happens when that neighbor wants to punch you in the face when you go over to ask for a cup of sugar, right? And that's what we're facing now. So I do think you're going to see a diversification, but I think Russia will be low on the list. But increasingly, at this rate, the United States is going to be low on that list.
What about, look, again, this is just a guesswork, but it's not guesswork that is without merit, I think. There's already been mentions of America pulling out of NATO. He said it in his last term. And the military spending in America, 1.3 billion, is the highest in the world. They've got the biggest military in the world. It's hard to imagine what they're going to do with that military, sort of. But what if America does do that? I mean, Canada is then deeply exposed to not just a broken trading partner, but potentially to an enemy on its border. Look, Trump has made no secret. He wants Greenland, he wants Panama Canal, and he wants Canada. It's not beyond the realms of reality to see this turning really nasty. What would be, is that being discussed? Is that something that you're thinking about?
Well, it's a bit of a taboo.
Right.
It is being discussed quietly and increasingly less quietly, but it is a bit of a taboo because what do you say? Our defense apparatus has been integrated with that of the United States for decades. We fought in wars with them, for going back to the First World War. We've had a peace between these two countries since, incidentally, the British burned down the White House in 1812. We got over that, and then we've become quite close friends for a very long time. We're part of NATO. We're part of NORAD. Our defense forces are effectively interoperable. We base everything on the assumption of interoperability, and the defense umbrella is the American defense umbrella. If you were to say, well, tomorrow that's going to be gone, then what? If NATO falls apart, then what? Who are our allies? Do we go back to a model of a Commonwealth allyship with the United Kingdom, with Australia, with New Zealand? Do we look to Europe? What do? We don't know. And the question is so hard to ask because it involves a fundamental rethinking of the country and its sovereignty itself. And nobody really wants to have that discussion, but it's now creeping up because we have no choice.
How are Canadians? We heard the booing, but just briefly, what are Canadians thinking? I read an article that said that 20 to 30-year-old Canadians are saying, why shouldn't we be Canica? Be great. I think I've just renamed it. Let's call it Canica. I'm Donald Trump in London. But what are people actually saying on the street?
People are apoplectic. I've never in my life seen the country this mad. The closest we've come is in 2003 when we sat out the Iraq War, and that became a major point of national pride. Canada has, for all of its integration with the United States, has often defined itself as not American. It's been in opposition to the United States, as we're a lot of things, but the fundamental thing we are first and foremost is not the Yankees. And so this has united the country in a way that truly has astonished me, where people have said, no, I'm not going to buy American. I'm not going to travel to the United States. I'm going to boo their national anthem. I'm going to stand up for Canada. I'm going to buy Canadian, and we'll never be the 51st state. And there's a kind of political consensus along that. And for the most part, with some exceptions, as you note, a cultural consensus too. I mean, it's truly been a moment of unity, of flag waving. I myself wrote a piece recently for my Substack about how I've become a reluctant nationalist. I just found myself viscerally becoming defensive of a country that I'm typically very critical of, and in the sense of saying, well, no, we get to make these criticisms, not you. And at the end of the day, we're going to decide how we're going to live, not you. And that's the feeling that's pervading the country right now. It's truly been remarkable. But my next question is, okay, well, what do we do with that now? And can we sustain it? And those are open questions. But it's truly one of the most remarkable times in the history of this country, certainly in the 41 years that I've been in it.
Well, we're never going to forget you're part of the Commonwealth. So as tiny as we are, we'll do our bit, I promise you. David, it's been an absolute joy to talk to you. Let's do it again. I'm sure there's going to be more to come over the next turbulent 4 or 5 years, if not more. David Moscrop there, Canadian political columnist and author of Too Dumb for a Democracy. Back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hey, good evening to you. This is Talk and it's Petrie with you until 1 o'clock. And coming up at midnight, your chance to talk back. And what I want to talk to you about is foreign aid. And is it time now that we think our own foreign aid work? Just to give you a quote from Labour, what are the priorities for UK aid spending? Labour government says its development aim is a world free from poverty on a livable planet. Its priorities include economic transformation, addressing unsustainable debt, providing climate finance and humanitarian aid, conflict prevention, and empowering women and girls. You're doing an absolutely rubbish job at that, Mr. Starmer, and all of our foreign aid. What's happened to the girls and women in Afghanistan? We're doing absolutely flap all to help them. The Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, has commissioned 3 reviews. Oh, good. We've got more reviews. That's what we need. And they couldn't have done those in the last 14 years when they were not in power. Extraordinary, isn't it? Anyway, he's commissioned 3 reviews into aid policy and is currently considering his response. I've got some of the numbers here about some of the money that we're giving to some countries. And I think that the reason I wanted to mention a world free from poverty on a livable planet is that after decades of a lot of countries giving a lot of aid, what changes have we actually seen? And this is what concerns me. Fundamentally, I completely agree with the fact that as the 5th richest planet in the country, and the reason you're feeling poorer and your council tax is going up is because of mismanagement by the governments that we've had in this country. It's not the fault of those people who are starving or picking out food from a rubbish tip, right? It's not because of our tiny £12 billion foreign aid budget. It is mismanagement on the grossest, most pathetic scale this country has ever seen, including the Tories and now Labour. But I just wonder what it is we think we're achieving, because we haven't really achieved very much. But foreign aid, in a lot of senses, is brown envelopes. That's what it is. It is, look, we want to do business with you. We want to put call centres here in India. Here's some foreign aid money. And a lot of people are really sickened by the fact that we're giving foreign aid to countries that choose to spend their own money, let's say, on space programs or on other things rather than on their own people. And of course, while they're getting that aid money, does it mean that they don't have to then look after their own people? I merely ask these questions because I do think that the soft power that foreign aid gives us is important. But I want to know what you think. I want to know if you think that we should go so far as just to say, that's it, we're cutting you off, we're cutting off the world. But what does that look like to you? I mean, when you see America doing, or Musk doing this, how could, he's not ordered 3 reviews into how US aid is working, he's just shut it down. And that will leave a lot of people a lot worse off. And if you say you don't care, well, why don't you care? I'm just interested. Why don't you care? Are we becoming that country as well, where it's just me first? Isn't it part of our responsibility? Do we have any responsibility to the rest of the world, do you think? We've taken a lot. We've taken a lot from various parts of the world. Do we owe them nothing now? Nothing. I'm just really fascinated where you stand on this. We've seen an example of somebody going in and just cutting it. Oh yeah, it'll eventually be taken into another department, or will it? Who will oversee that money? Will Donald Trump make those decisions? Will Donald Trump make the decisions as to who gets foreign aid? That's pretty worrying. Anyway, give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate. And you can text the word talk and then your message to 87222.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good evening to you. This is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And now it's time to head over to LA, to Caroline Faraday, multi-award-winning journalist in that particular area. How are you doing, Caroline?
Just in this narrow, sweet area.
In this narrow, sweet area. How is California? I just need to ask you that. How are you doing?
It's been a ride, but it's been interesting. In the last week, the music industry has sort of rallied in LA with these two events that have been to support those who lost their homes in the wildfires. They're just about getting the Pacific Coast Highway open again for people to drive through, but just a single lane of traffic, and obviously people can't stop because that stretch of road is important for people to be able to get up and down. I mean, the traffic's been terrible, but I know also nobody's moaning about the traffic because they've still got their homes and their jobs. But I mean, that sort of road of decimation, it's been very strange and difficult and a lot to navigate. But anyway, we had Fire Aid on Thursday, which was a big fundraiser, and then the Grammy Awards as well, and that they really focused on the disaster that happened in Los Angeles at the Grammy Awards as well, and the music industry raising a lot of money for those people impacted.
And also, I believe there were firefighters on the stage as well, who got a standing ovation. That was a nice touch.
Honestly, Petrie, these firefighters are so incredible, and it's so humbling. I'm such a nerd that I sit there watching, like the flight apps where you can see aircraft. You probably don't, because this is probably not how you spend your time. But anyway, I go on I love a flight app as it is. But when they were fighting the fires with the helicopters, you would watch these tankers and with the Phos-Chek, that red stuff, the retardant drop, and these other helicopters just going round and round doing water drops over and over and over, and these pilots doing like 16-hour shifts, these fire crews. In fact, one of the most heartwarming stories, it was in the mountain fire, which was the one in Camarillo, which happened in November, and I was chatting to somebody who lost their home in that recently, and she told me this story of how the firefighters got to her house. It was burning down, and by the door, she hadn't even been able to get back to her house. She was at work when the evacuation order came, and it was all too late, but her car keys were by the front door, and the firefighters just sort of grabbed what they could, which was like some of her husband's like collection of, I think, Star Wars or Star Trek or something figures, and then like a big picture from her wedding of, you know, like dates and things. It's even just a little bit charred, and they just piled as much as they could into her vehicle, and they drove that car down the street as far as they could, and she found it a few days later, her car with all the stuff in that these firefighters had just moved. So honestly, these guys really do go above and beyond in these most terrible circumstances to just try and save your home and your belongings and risk their lives and work these insane long shifts and put their lives on hold. So I think we're all quite grateful to them. But yes,
amazing.
They did get a rightful massive round of applause.
Yeah, they absolutely did. Others that got a massive, probably rightful round of applause, because although she's won more Grammys than anybody else, Beyonce finally won Album of the Year.
Yeah, do you remember Jay-Z went off on one last year at the Grammys that Beyonce's wife hadn't won the Best Album category. So she's had her eye on this prize amongst all her other prizes as the most coveted award really for some time. And she released this album, Cowboy Carter, which was a really interesting album. She made a country album, and she also won Best Country Album at the Grammys. Well, that's the first time that a black woman has ever won that category, and one of only a handful of times that a black woman has won the Best Album category. So, you know, quite groundbreaking from Beyonce in that regard. And also, the head of the Grammys came out and he talked about how they've sort of improved and assessed their diversity of their voting body. The artist The Weeknd in 2020 had really heavily criticised the Grammys voting as being not transparent. And he said, I'm not going to attend again. And the head of the Grammys came out. Let me tell you, by the way, who was possibly the most charismatic person I've ever seen. You know, normally when they send the execs out from the organisations, they're dull as dishwater. This incredibly charismatic man took to the stage. I was like, do you want to be president anytime soon? Anyway, and he talked about unity and all sorts of, quite positive, heartwarming, nice messages, and one of those were about, like he said, look, people criticised us and we listened, and that's what you want to hear from leadership, isn't it? If you've got criticism, you want them to say,
but at the moment, there might be a few Americans going, oh, it's just DEI. That's how she won, and that's not fair. Should have been a white guy.
Yeah, well, you know. I'm sure they are saying that.
I know.
Depressing, isn't it?
Yeah. The interesting thing, I loved what she said, actually, when she said, basically, to the words of, these executives try to box us in. They get us in a genre. And we're artists, you know, we want to explore our music. And for her to win on a country album just goes to prove, doesn't it? Look, if you're a talented artist, why are you stuck in one genre of song? Like, that's what you should do that, stick with that.
Yeah, and you know, the other artist who I think has been exceptional at that was Ray, British artist Ray, who went to her first Grammy. She had 2 nominations. She didn't win, but she was very deserving of being on that platform. And she, for a long time, again, she's written songs for Beyonce, and she's an amazing talent both as a songwriter and as an artist in her own right. But she was with a record label who didn't really give her that freedom, and they said, well, we think you're like a featured artist and we're not going to believe in you. And she went out and when she eventually managed to get herself released from her record contract, she recorded her own album, My 21st Century Blues, and that's the one that went on to win all the Brit Awards and get nominated and get her these nominations. So I think that the artists now do have a lot more power in the music industry. Taylor Swift, again, has done an awful lot for the power of music artists, who don't have her power and wealth, and speaking up for them in when she started early on, that she didn't own her own recordings, and she's gone back now and re-recorded her early albums so that she will, because she didn't particularly like the people who did own them. Chapel Roan, she recorded Pink Pony Club and then was dropped by her label, and she spoke on stage with a message about healthcare and how it was a struggle for her because she was signed to this record label and that they didn't really treat her like a worker. Listen, we could have a whole other debate about whether or not your healthcare should be attached to your job, but if being a recording artist is your job, it's a very valid question, particularly for sort of artists who don't make those kind of mega bucks. They haven't even got basic healthcare and can't afford basic healthcare when you're a struggling musician and want to stick to your artistry. By the way, her performance of Pink Pony Club was one of my performances of the night. She was phenomenal, Chapel Roan. Another artist who performed was Benson Boone, and I've heard his song on the radio and love it, but my goodness, he put on this performance. He's in like spandex and glitter that would rival Freddie Mercury. I mean, his voice, he did backflips. It was absolutely brilliant. So suddenly that was a real sort of showcase as well. I thought that was a good one. But all, the big stars were there. The Lady Gagas, she spoke up for the trans community. Alicia Keys, actually, she commented on DEI. So there were those artists speaking up for the marginalised communities. And,
Well, I mean, look, they have
at a time where they don't feel they are.
They have a massive platform and they have a massive fan base. So hopefully some of those messages get through. Listen, I can't finish on the Grammys without talking about Kanye. Yay, whatever he's called now, and Bianca Censori. Now, it's interesting. I heard somebody commenting
today.
Why
don't give them attention? Just pretend they don't exist.
But is he an artist? Are they artists pushing the envelope, as has been suggested, or is he a control freak?
Been suggested by Kanye, who is the biggest fan of Kanye. I have never quite forgiven Kanye West, which he's going to be called Kanye West and he can be called Ye all he likes. But anyway, when he performed at Glastonbury on a stage where so many amazing rock artists have performed, and he told the audience that he was the greatest rock artist ever, and proceeded to forget the words to Bohemian Rhapsody, which I thought had a degree of arrogance that I didn't quite buy into. Listen, he's a dude who's had a couple of rap records out and some success, and he's had his clothes and made some money.
It's heartbreaking looking at her. Honestly,
the idea of him using that power to I don't know what sexual fantasies he is.
It just shows a really weak man. But apparently he's lost £20 million worth of gigs in Japan because of this.
I just think the whole thing is gruesome, right?
Yeah.
It's degrading, and as a person with eyes, right, if somebody sent me an unsolicited naked picture of themselves, I'd be, that's a gross thing to do. And if somebody does that, you can go to the police and say, somebody sent me this and I don't want it. So I don't want to see somebody's foo on the red carpet. No. Unsolicited. I just don't. I don't need it. If I want to see one, I've got one. Right? I don't need to see anyone else's. Thank you very much. Right? I don't even look at that all that often.
Oh, do you know what? I love you.
It's just
This
not
is why. This is
necessary,
why I
is
love
it?
you. This is why
But
I
it's
love you.
also degrading.
It is degrading. I just think
Unpleasant, and it makes me very uncomfortable, and she looks uncomfortable. And I'm not going to get into whether or not there's consent. What there is an imbalance of power, and there is somebody being exploited, and all of these people and us talking about it are continuing to fuel something that is just very, very grim.
it is so grim. And I listen, I have no purchase with those people. I wouldn't buy anything of Ye's, Kanye's, whatever his name is, if my life depended on it. Listen, we love you. Caroline Faraday, take care. Absolutely brilliant. She's got one if she wants to look at it. There's a mirror. Thank you. Caroline Faraday, award-winning journalist in LA.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, and a good evening to you. This is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock. Don't forget, at midnight, we've got the phone in, and I want to talk to you about foreign aid and whether you support what America has just done with its foreign aid in just cutting it, stopping it at this point, whether you think we should do the same, and really how would you like your foreign aid to be spent? I think that is a more interesting question, right? Where do you want it to go? Who do you want it to go to? And who should it support? Because clearly it shouldn't be China, right? It really shouldn't, although that's just brown envelopes, using our money as a brown envelope sort of bribe, if you like. So I'd like to hear from you. What good have we done over the decades we've been giving foreign aid, and how can we make it work? So give me a call, 0344 499 1000, and you can message me as well, 87222, put the word talk up front. Now though, we have been following, because of the weight loss jabs, we hear all about these weight loss jabs all the time. So we thought it would be a good idea to follow somebody's journey on the weight loss drugs to get some truth, right? Because you hear all these, oh, there's all this, and oh, it's all that, and oh, I was so sick, and I was so ill, and I was so this. So I wanted to find somebody that we could follow through this journey, and we've done just that. And it's Timmy Alexis Carrington-Wood, broadcaster and host of the Here She Is show on YouTube. And he joins me now. Now, Timmy Yeah, where's that hair?
Petrie.
Where's that hair gel I wanted?
It's a pineapple. It's pineapple.
It's
I'm going
nice.
back to cheese. Pineapple head.
Crikey. Anyway, for those of you who are not
You
watching
can talk.
this,
Look at your gold blouse tonight.
glitter.
Who do you think you are, Lionel Richie?
Yeah, I do actually.
There you are.
Right, Timmy, you started 4 weeks ago
Yes.
taking, I think it was Wigovi. Is that right?
Yeah, and I'm going to say just over 4 weeks ago. So I've done it a month. I'm on to my second month actually now.
Okay, so talk me through the first month, because we joined you when you first started. When you first started taking this, we were joined up with you and Alma from the Harley Street Skin Clinic, and it's through them that you're having these injections. You're being monitored. How has that month been? What was that like?
So, now you have been in touch with me, haven't you, on WhatsApp? We WhatsApped each other
Every day, yeah.
every day, and sometimes with our clothes on.
Sometimes.
But that first month, honestly, I thought I was like, you know, when you hear the ladies from Weight Watchers who go back and say, I've had a little bit of a terrible week. I had crunchy, but really they've had 40 pies. I felt a bit like that. I thought I was going to, because I'm being looked after by Armour, Dr. Khan at Harley Street, I go there every month to get my weigh in. I have been WhatsApping you. I've been WhatsApping him because we're doing this as a journey. He's doing it as well, saying I'm really, really scared that I'm going to let you down because I don't feel I've done anything right. I don't feel as I've lost anything.
Well, no, you were having custard for breakfast.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
Well, I'm just saying.
And I'm the normal person doing it. I say normal, but I am the man on the street doing it. So we're giving an honest. That's why Dr. Khan is doing it, because he's the professional, and I'm doing it just as somebody going along. Oh, there I am. That's me having a chat with one of. I'm doing a video diary for them. Anyway, so I've been really, really scared. I was eating chocolate bars and things. I would wake up. I've actually got a very sweet tooth. Anyway, went in for my weigh-in. I was so scared. I was saying to the girls, please don't tell me, please don't tell me. I have lost in the first month without even trying. I'm telling you, without even trying, half a stone.
I mean, that is remarkable because...
Look, see that sandwich there?
Yeah.
One day, I could only eat one half of that. I was so full after that. There are days, and I've heard this of people on this, of people one day feeling they can eat everything, and next day they just can't eat. It's mental, actually, how it's... You hear Oprah Winfrey saying it, don't you? The fridge noise. I don't hear it. And I've done my month. I've lost a stone, half a stone. Now I'm on 5 milligrams. Is that right? 5 milligrams.
Yeah.
And seriously, I think it's kicked in already. I have to really remember to eat, just purely because I get headaches if I don't eat. So I'm actually making myself. You've heard me. I wake up in the morning, have custard.
Yeah.
I'll have the leftover desserts from the night before with my coffee. I love food. I've had to make myself just butter a piece of bread to eat in the morning.
I mean, it has been remarkable because, I mean, it's no surprise for anybody that you and I are close friends. And you...
A little bit more than that, aren't we, on occasions?
But in your dreams. But you would text me or phone me or whatever. We're in contact constantly, just saying, oh, that's good. I had fish and chips and a pot of Ben & Jerry's ice cream for my dinner. And I mean, I have been supportive, but I was also laughing at you saying, I can't wait for this weigh-in because you're just going to put weight on.
We were both.
Yeah.
I mean, you were getting satisfaction out of my humiliation.
I really was. And yet you let me down again. Because it is...
I was so thrilled. I phoned you straight away as I came up, didn't I?
I think before you phoned your husband.
Yeah.
But this is the thing, isn't it? That a lot of people will be really surprised. I mean, we were surprised because you weren't. I kept saying to you, no, you've got to help it a bit. And you said, no, I'm not going to help it. I'm going to do what my body tells me to.
Yeah, correct. Let me just, that is exactly what I said to you, isn't it? I said, listen, I feel hungry when I feel hungry. This is meant to have taken away that, because if I'm doing this and I'm doing it let's say, the easy way, because I'm doing this, I'm going to make the injection work. So if I felt hungry and I need to eat something, I will. I wanted to do a diet. If it was only worth doing if I could do this diet without feeling I was on this diet and without not going to places because I would be scared of eating stuff or drinking stuff. Honestly, you don't feel you're missing out because you just don't want it.
And did you have any of the side effects that we hear about? Any of the nausea, any of the vomiting?
A little bit of nausea, occasionally here and there. Actually, when I exert myself, I felt a little bit of. But that is all. And I have been doing as well. I haven't just been relying on it. I have been doing my 10,000 steps a day that Dr. Khan told me to do. So I'm doing that. So I'm not one of those people that we all feel don't want to go on this drug for, because people will say, oh, they're just fat and lazy. So they're just taking the easy way out. But my thing is, so I'm doing the exercises. And also my thing is, if you can go straight down a lovely road to get to your destination, or have to hike up a hill and fall down and blah, blah, blah to get to that place, why would you do that? Especially, why are we all living longer? Because we're taking pills and things. So why then do we just say no to something that makes us healthier so we won't get disease and things if we are overweight? Why are people turning their nose up on that? Because we are taking pills.
Naturally thin people are saying that, because they never have the noise. Right, so you've gone up to the 5 now, and you'll be on the 5 for another month, right? For the 4 weeks. Have you had any more side effects on the 5 than you think you might have had on the 2.5?
No, but I do feel it's kicked in. There were times last month I just thought, oh, have I been given a dud? Am I one of those people it's not working on? Because of this time of wanting to eat, and because I've been eating chocolate bars and things, I am craving sugar, funny enough, like chocolate bars and things like that. I don't know what that is, but I honestly think it's made me eat in moderation.
And with eating in moderation, are you eating sensibly in moderation? Because your idea of eating in moderation might just be 1 packet of biscuits as opposed to maybe a nice meal.
It's still better, though, isn't it, than eating the whole packet?
Yeah, but you've got to keep your nutrients up, right? Are you taking supplements? Are you...
Is that mean?
So no, right. And the other thing...
I went out for a meal yesterday. I had a Caesar salad and a Diet Coke. What? Not a wine in sight, not a burger in sight. A lovely Caesar salad. Finished it all. That's my roughage.
That for you is extraordinary. What about going forward on this? You've lost half a stone. You may not lose as quickly this month, or you may lose more quickly. Do you have a plan for when this stops?
Well, actually, when I went in for my weigh-in, Leslie, Dr. Khan's wife, who were their partners at the Harley Street Clinic, did say we might have to, because you've lost so much in the first month, put you on a microdose in the 6-month period that I'm meant to be on it, because I'm losing a lot on it. Mind you, so did, I don't want to burst his bubble, but Dr. Khan lost 6 pounds as well on his first week. And we've spoken to people first month, I'm so sorry, yeah. And also we've spoken to people that have been on this very drug and they haven't lost stuff in there. They haven't lost anything in the first month, and that was just purely getting them used to the symptoms.
Well, listen, we've got to go, but listen, we will talk.
Well, I've got to go because I've got that pie in the oven.
You've got the pie, you've got to go and eat that. Gary says you look very handsome and good luck on your journey. But Gary,
get me Gary's number, come on.
Yeah, Gary's on radio though, so he's listening on radio, not looking. I'll speak to you tomorrow. Love you. Right, that's Timmy Alexis Carrington Ward, who's taking Wigoffy. Next, it's Vince.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, good to have your company, and with me in the studio, Vincent Moss, former political editor. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. Vincent, I've been talking about the, not the trade war, although that seems to be on the back burner for now, but the USAID organisation just being completely shut down. Musk has done a Twitter, he's gone in and in a couple of days, or a day, decided that this is a corrupt organisation and needs to be shut down, which makes it sound to me like he'd already made that decision before he went in. And he said Trump agrees. First of all, who's in control? Is it President Musk, or is it Vice President Trump? I mean, I can't figure it out.
I think the line from Musk seems to be he's got his own ideas, but Trump says, well, I look at his ideas, and if I agree with them, I go ahead with them. But I mean, imagine the remarkable situation on Monday morning. Hundreds of Americans who work for the aid agency effectively found out they didn't have a job anymore.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, this is what he did in Twitter, isn't he? He got rid of all the...
but at least he owns Twitter, so it's a bit different. This is part of the government, effectively. So, yeah, just gone in and said, I don't like the way this operation works. Rather than try and reform it, just seems to want to close down the whole agency and not the huge amount of aid that it delivers to more than 100 countries all over the world. And
they say it's going to be taken into the State Department at some point. But this has always been an organisation that has operated outside of politics, right? It has always operated outside of politics. It was set up and ratified by Congress. There are legal action now in play, apparently, to say Congress is the only thing that can decide to disband this organisation. But this is an apolitical organisation, deliberately set up to work outside of politics. If it's taken into the State Department, who decides who gets the money? Because then it becomes a political pot of money.
Yeah, and presumably President Trump and his allies will give it to countries that they like and who they think support America's views, and not give it to others. But the key thing about aid and how you spend it is, if there are problems, particularly in places like Africa, the argument is if you spend $1 over there, you save yourself hundreds of dollars, because if it's a problem like, for example, with migration, one of the ways of stopping migration, for example, into Europe and into the UK is to spend money on aid in some of those areas to stop people wanting to make the journey in the first place. And that saves you in the long run far more money than you spend putting people up in hotels and processing their applications. So there are sensible reasons for spending money abroad, but public finances, we're seeing the same argument here. People for a long time have moaned about how much the UK spends on foreign aid, but because public finances are so straitened and because of what's happening in America, that argument is now happening over here, where people are saying, hang on, our hospitals are full and overcrowded, can we really be spending anything on foreign aid? So that argument that's happening in America, we've seen what Musk is doing over there, and it won't be long before there are calls for similar sort of action over here, because there's so many people who feel that we spend too much on foreign aid in the UK. Yeah,
I mean, I will be having that conversation actually later on, because I think there is... Obviously, some of the papers have said to Americans, this is what they're wasting your money on. And there does seem to be some odd things that foreign aid is indeed spent on. I think we were supporting a Thai pop group or something at one point. But this is why this is outside of politics, presumably, because somebody will sit down and go, well, if we do that, then that Thai pop group can sing songs about democracy or freedom or whatever, I don't know, and that's soft power. And also it's been pointed out that with American aid, that gets Americans into parts of countries, potential enemies. They've got boots on the ground, which they wouldn't be able to have militarily, for example, where they can actually gather intelligence, they understand where their enemies are, what their enemies might be planning. You lose that foothold into these countries and you lose that ability to know what's going on. Do you think America will regret this.
Yes, you definitely lose that vital intelligence, and aid agencies quite often deny that they're involved in this sort of work, and governments do it under the radar, and all governments do it, often under the guise of aid agencies. Some are more conspicuous than others, and that's vital intelligence. But it's not just about the intelligence you get about what's going on in a country. Theoretically, if it's a poor country and you can use aid to build it up, you're creating yourself a future export market. If you can make a small, poor, disenfranchised, broken country repair itself. You've seen this with some of the African economies. If you can then grow those, you're creating a market for, if it's America's case, American-made goods or UK-made goods. What you want is a prosperous world. Now, you get into resource arguments about what that means for climate change and can we afford everybody to be a wealthy country. But one of the arguments about spending a little bit of money on aid and helping countries build up their infrastructure is you're then creating, one, you're making it a safer place and less likely to become, as we saw with parts of Africa, a place where sedition and a sort of hotbed, if you like, of people who want to do harm to America in here. So one, you cut down, as you're highlighting, the risk of that sort of terror cells growing there. But two, you potentially create a huge a huge market overseas where you can export your goods.
The problem is, though, Vincent, is we see so often countries, China, India, these countries are even saying we don't want it. Being given money in the hundreds of millions, it's not in the billions, and India, the argument is, has a space program.
Exactly.
So why are we giving it to a country? Why aren't they spending their own money on their own people? And that is quite a strong argument, but it is always the case, I think, that if they won't spend it on their own people, then do we owe them something? Should we then go, well, look, starving people is not a good look, we'll help?
Well, it's hard because that is one of the cases that gets highlighted. We do, I think, as far as I know, still give aid to India. We certainly did. And it does have a space program and it's developing a hugely prosperous economy. But when you look at some of the levels of deprivation in England, whether it's across the UK, where there's still food banks, a lot of people are suffering, it's very hard to explain to people, although I'm sure the Foreign Office would make a case for this, why that money is going overseas when it could be spent here. And there's a growing number of voices that are saying, that money should be being spent here because it goes into the billions. It's an awful lot of money. We could do a lot with the money in the UK. There will be arguments about why it should be going abroad, but it's hugely controversial. And at times when public finances are so straitened as they are at the moment, it gets increasingly hard to defend. What the Trump philosophy seems to be, burn it all down, and I think they're spending whatever it is, 40 billion a year on their aid programme, and I'll then refund the bits that I like. But I think even when he had his provisional budget planned, he would already plan to only spend about 27, 28 billion. Still a lot, but significantly less than the programme was before. So I suspect with like a lot of Trump things, he says no, no, no. He'll end up refunding parts of it, but there's no doubt there'll be huge cuts as part of this process.
But the State Department running it, which is open to politics.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the problem here. I mean, even our own overseas spending in aid is set. But it's been set by government in the same way that Congress set up US aid, and the House would have to ratify any change. It's a percentage of GDP, isn't it?
Yes.
And I think that was Cameron. Was that David Cameron?
It was Cameron, and then it got cut. One of the things, and then I think I can't remember where we are now, where there was a pledge to restore it, but there was certainly a fixed amount of GDP that went on aid, and it was seen as many people in the Conservative Party didn't support it, but Cameron was determined to push it through, and it was supported by many other people. But that was in slightly different times when the public finances weren't in the state they are in now. It's
very difficult, isn't it, to persuade people that this is money well spent.
Well, it may be well spent, but it's hard. It's difficult to persuade them that it should be a priority at a time when there's so much other pressure on public finances.
Yeah, it is. So there you go. That's what I'm going to be talking about. I think it's really, really interesting, and does it depend on who we want to be seen as? Because again, Vincent, with US aid, what damage is this going to do to America's reputation? Because, I mean, not that it seems that President Musk or Vice President Trump seem to care about that, but what is this going to do for their reputation globally? Because that is also important.
It is important, but he's only concerned about his domestic base, isn't he? America first, everything is America first, and if he's prepared to alienate Canada, who really are super close allies of America, then frankly the rest of the world doesn't stand a chance.
No.
Because if you're prepared to annoy literally your best friend
and the nicest
partner,
people in the world,
absolutely, then I don't think he's too worried about what they think in Asia, Africa, and Australia, and Europe, and UK, and the rest of it.
It's just really, really interesting how the speed at which all of this is going as well. Well, listen, talking about Canada, I've decided going forward, my team and I've decided going forward, we're going to have a look at papers from either Canada, Mexico, and America itself, because we get a form of information from America. I don't know how much more honest and able the papers are. I would like to reflect what America is thinking. Today we've got the Globe and the Mail from Canada. And these are slightly out of date because of the time difference. But interesting, though, of the wording that's being used. Trudeau, Trump to talk after US declares trade war. That is a fairly brutal language there. They're not mucking around, these nice people of the world. No,
and it's interesting when you see it from a Canadian perspective, because obviously they've put themselves at the heart of it. The Globe and Mail front page is not a picture of Trump, it's a picture of Trudeau, their Prime Minister, and it's through their prism that they see the world, and their sort of sub-headline, if you like, is Canada hits back. This was before the things appeased earlier with Trump and Trudeau sort of agreeing a delay before any of these things come in. But it was saying that Canada was hit back and it was ready to put its own tariffs in place on the billions in US products that come through. So it's interesting that other countries, rather unsurprisingly, are just saying, well, we're not going to put up with this, we're fed up. And we saw this with the Mexicans pushing back and saying, the president saying, OK, well, we're not going to do this, and actually smiling through her press conference because she thought that she'd ended up with a rather good deal. That, yes, she'll send some few troops to the border, but she's got a commitment from Trump that he'll try and stop firearms coming into Mexico. So she feels as though that situation's worked out in her favour. It'd be interesting. I probably couldn't read a Mexican newspaper, but I suspect if we were reading Mexican newspapers, they'd be presenting a rather triumphal view from a Mexican standpoint about their outcomes with Trump. The deal that they've been able to do. But a lot of the world is looking at these tariffs as seeing these countries backing down, playing into Donald Trump's game. He absolutely said that there was nothing these countries could do. He was going ahead with it. These were not a negotiating tool. Fundamentally not true, right? Clearly they were a negotiating tool because he thinks he's got a good deal from Mexico with the 10,000 troops going there. He also thinks he's got a good deal from Canada, but earlier on in the programme I was speaking to somebody in Canada who's going, actually, we've given him absolutely flap all. So I don't know, you know, he said you'll hear the word 10,000 troops going to the border, but we've already got 8,500 there. So exactly, and I think Canada said they were going to give them a fentanyl czar to try and stop some of the fentanyl. 1% of the fentanyl. That's right, only 1% comes across that border. And 1% of the illegal migrants. Exactly, hardly any. So it looks as though, yes, he makes this big point. He probably saw how the American stock market started to nosedive, and then very quickly there were talks with both Canada and Mexico, and the situation seemed to reverse. So the threat, but domestically, what he does, he's very good at, is he said, I made this threat, and it worked, and he tells people it worked, and probably a lot of the American media reports it as working, but it's reliant on the perceptions of other media and the output that comes from Mexico and Canada. We all have to look at it and go, well, did it actually work, or was it just bluster? And it looks certainly at this point in terms of, has he actually won any massive concessions from Mexico and Canada? The answer really has to be no, I think, doesn't it? And my understanding was as well that Mexico has denied the use of Mexican airspace for military aircraft as well, which is a major issue to his getting rid of. And let's see how successfully he's renaming the Gulf of Mexico, which all seems to have gone very quiet. That's gone very quiet as well. Toronto Star is saying Canada not backing down. Again, in a conversation I had earlier on, they were talking about the fact that Mark Carney is going to be taking over as interim PM. He was
the governor of the Bank of England, he'd been the governor of the Bank of Canada. There's a great piece on the front here from Altia Raj, who's saying trying to appease Trump is a game we can't win because there are no rules to it, right? Nobody knows what the rules of the game are. It's like going onto a pitch and saying, right, the aim is to win, and you're going, well, what are we playing here? And actually nobody knows the rules. So it's very, very difficult for anybody to know exactly what's going to go on. But he keeps mentioning Canada being the 51st state of the US.
Which must really annoy most Canadians, let alone French Canadians.
They're worried about it, they're frightened about it now.
Exactly. I would have thought it would be annoying, frightened, in some ways not surprised. But again, the coverage of Toronto Star, the headline is Canada not backing down. And it's very much...
Well, they can turn off the taps, remember, for their oil.
Yes, and that's the one thing he does need, is he does need cheap fuel if he wants to do the things he wants to do.
60% of all oil came from Canada.
Yeah.
60%. If they switch the taps off, if they turn that off, then... Okay, I mean, this is the thing. They go, well, America has loads of oil. We can just dig out our own oil. True. It's the wrong kind of oil for the refineries that are set up. They are set up for heavy oil, which is what comes from Canada. So, yes, you can dig as much oil as you want, baby, but you can't refine it.
You can't refine it. And what happens? A lot of their fruit, avocados and other fruits, all comes from Mexico. Not all of it comes from Mexico. That will, if he stops that coming through, that would drive up inflation, which is the last thing he wants, because he's really promised to get prices under control.
He's now said that the American people are happy to take some pain.
Some pain, but not spiralling inflation, particularly in the supermarket, where food price inflation, as we saw a year or so ago, was massive. So I think he's realising it's fine to make these threats, but where they're going to have consequences like rising inflation, he's got to back down. He'll tell people he's won, like he always tells people he's won. He told people he won the last election when he lost it. I mean, obviously won the last one, but the one before that he still claims he won.
Yeah, I know. But the thing is that, like you said, he'll play this to his base, and his base will be happy with it. What about European tariffs? I mean, he said that they've been criminal. The EU has been criminal, behaving criminally because of the trade deficit. Well, it's not the EU's fault if America wants to buy EU goods more than the EU wants to buy American goods. Do you remember the chlorinated chicken? Right? There are higher standards in the food in Britain and in the EU. You will not persuade the EU to buy chlorinated chicken or steroid pumped up beef or any of the other things that Donald Trump wants to. That's why the EU, the trading markets are very specific. That's why when we left the EU during Brexit, there were some of our products that they said, no, you've still got to keep it. If you want to sell them to us, you may not be in the EU anymore, but they've got to be of the same standard or we're not buying them, right? So how is Trump going to force the EU into buying substandard food products?
I don't think he is. That's the problem. The consumers aren't going to put up with it, and it's not
nobody
just
will
that.
buy it.
It's the
Would
cars.
you buy chlorinated chicken?
You go to America and you look at the amount of European and British cars you see over there, and they're not going to buy American cars. If anything, they might buy Chinese cars. Particularly electric Chinese cars are particularly cheap at the moment.
Which
arguably.
they will sell through Vietnam, so there won't be any tariffs.
Yes, yeah, but they're not going to buy American cars. And Americans are still, I know it's typical of the whole of America, but if you go to California and New York, you see Range Rovers and luxury English cars all over the road.
Yes, they're everywhere.
Everywhere. So he's never going to rectify that trade back. One of the reasons we get off lightly is because by bizarre quirk of fate, the trade gap, we think there's a trade gap in our favour. I think, can't remember which way around it is.
Tiny.
It's pretty much
even,
deficit. Stevens. Exactly.
It's even.
They both calculate it slightly differently. So he's not annoyed with us because there's no real trade deficit to speak of. It's a few millions or tens of millions of pounds. But it's a huge amount with the EU, and he hates that. So that's why there's a real problem.
But he sees that as being criminal. They have done nothing wrong in producing goods that America wants to buy. I don't understand how that's criminal.
You think for a free market capitalist, that's literally the definition.
That's literally the definition of the market, right? And you're not going to persuade Europeans to buy massive, great, big American cars when everybody's trying to go electric.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they're going to fix that.
I don't think they are. But now people are. This is I always wondered what the Brexit win was, but one of the things that people are pointing out is that because we're not part of the EU at this point, and we have this very narrow trade gap, that we are very much, we're not out of his sights when it comes to potential tariffs, but we are certainly very low on his list compared to
he said that we've done
places.
wrong things as well. I don't know quite what they are, but he said today, you know, we're not.
And Keir Starmer's trying very hard to stay out of it and thinking, just as long as I'm not in the crosshairs, that'll do fine.
Yeah, I think hiding is not actually going to prove to be the right, the right move. Vincent, let's take a quick break before we dive through the papers, the British papers, that is. We'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, great to have your company as Vincent Moss and myself go through the papers for Tuesday. Let's have a look at the Times. NHS withhold Nottingham report to protect the killer's privacy. The NHS has refused to publish in full a report exposing failings in the treatment of a paranoid schizophrenic who killed 3 people in Nottingham because of patient confidentiality and data protection issues. Can the NHS refuse to do this? Surely government can intervene.
Well, you'd think patients have obviously got a right to confidentiality, but I would imagine that once you commit a triple murder, you probably lose
that.
all of those privileges, and not least because it's really important people find out what went wrong with the issues in this case, so that they don't happen again. So the Valdo Calacane, who'd committed this horrendous triple murder in 2023 when he stabbed those 3 people, all pictured on the front of the Times there. If there were failings in the system, like Southport and like all these other cases, they need to be properly examined. We need transparency. It's sunlight shone on them, so you can avoid a repetition of it. So if, as the Times is alleging, the NHS is withholding parts of the report about this, then that's obviously completely wrong. And
it's in the public interest. It's not that it's just interesting to the public. Yeah. It is in the public interest that we understand how this man was out to kill 3 innocent victims. This actually reminds me of the ruling by a judge to not name the judges involved in the Sarah Sharif murder, which of course has now been overturned because other judges went that you overstepped the mark. You know, we have to have transparency, we have to know what went wrong, and no, you can't keep these names secret. It's absolutely right. But this seems to be happening quite a lot at the moment, Vincent, that there are people trying to stop us from getting information which is vital. I mean, you could argue that the Southport murders, Keir Starmer withheld information that was vital. This has got to be stopped.
Well, very much so, especially when there are allegations that he wasn't assessed properly and there could have been earlier interventions.
Yeah.
Very similar parallels in many ways with what happened in Southport, is that people could have intervened earlier.
Yeah.
I think that there's an argument that the people involved have got some degree of privacy and their names could be redacted, if you like, but what happens has to go in there. There's a slight risk with a lot of the vigilante action that's happening is if you start to name, and this is where I do have some sympathy, I do think the judges should have been named in that case, but you've got to protect their addresses, for example, because you can't have vigilantes going around to their houses and saying, and the kind of lynch mob mentality. But there's no reason why all the medical history and the treatments or interventions or lack of interventions in this case shouldn't be revealed. And as you say, it's becoming a bit of a pattern, really, that
it really is.
We need to see reversed.
It's actually a worrying pattern, and I think it's something that as journalists we're beholden to keep an eye on.
Very much
actually.
so. Yeah.
The other story on the front of the Times for Tuesday: PM won't back the EU in a trade war. Starmer refuses to criticise Trump's plan for 10% tariffs on the bloc. I hadn't heard that it was 10%. I'm not sure where that has come from. And US tensions overshadow bid for Brussels reset, because of course the PM today was in a meeting that no British Prime Minister has been involved in since Brexit.
Yeah.
Today they've all had a little cosy chat, but that was about NATO.
Yes.
And they're right to have that conversation, because I suspect Trump's got something to say about NATO coming up. So Keir Starmer has warned Europe's leaders he will not take sides in a trade war with Donald Trump, saying it was in Britain's vital interest to avoid conflict with its most important allies. So we're Switzerland now.
Well, very much so. I mean, I'm not sure I really understand the point the Times is making here, because we're not part of the EU anymore, and the EU is perfectly capable of making its own complaints to Trump about its behaviour it wants to, and we need to have a good trading relationship with America, just as we do with Europe, ideally. So it's no surprise that Keir Starmer doesn't want to insert himself in the middle of a very angry trade war.
But Europe is our biggest trading
very much
partner.
So, yeah.
It's also next door. And if I had to back a horse, if this was a two-horse race, I'd back the EU, not America.
Yeah, because
not at the moment.
No, especially as most British businesses, you rightly say, will be doing overseas trade that they are doing, will almost certainly be in Europe. The vast majority of it won't be, perhaps car makers aside, and some of the others won't really be in America. So yes, Keir Starmer doesn't want to insert himself in a trade war between the EU and Europe, especially. He might have to, but although he knows he's got a battle coming down, as you highlight, with NATO, because we're under huge pressure, as is the EU, to up the amount of GDP it spends on defence spending. We're at 2.5%, not at 2.5% yet, it's supposed to be getting there. Trump has demanded a very unrealistic, but 5% of GDP
Which
is spent.
they're not even spending.
No, they're not even spending that, that's right. But when does that ever stop President Trump from making a demand the fact that he doesn't do it? So.
Yeah, that's very true. Right, let's take a break. When we come back, Vincent Moss and myself, we will be looking into Tuesday's paper, starting with The Guardian.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, good to have your company, and with me is Vincent Moss, former political editor, and we're going through Tuesday's papers. The Guardian, Starmer faces Labour revolt over a backing for a, whisper it, oil field. Keir Starmer is facing a growing internal backlash over almost everything I think they could have put in that sentence, but over the potential approval of a giant new oil field after Treasury sources indicated Rachel Reeves was likely to back the idea. MPs described a breaking point in relations and called for Starmer to reiterate his own commitment to no further oil and gas licences. The Rosebank development, however, was given the go-ahead in 2023. But it was ruled unlawful by a court last week. So interesting times for the Prime Minister. He needs money, and so does Rachel Reeves.
He does, and they both need growth. And one of the things you need for growth is always cheap energy, and that's something we're struggling with at the moment. The predictions are, the latest predictions is that fuel prices are going to be going up, certainly for domestic customers in the next round of price rises. But one way round this is to allow this controversial Rosebank development to go ahead. Now, the way around it is apparently it wouldn't be a breach of Labour's manifesto, because that was only promising about not issuing new exploration licences. And because this is an existing one, it's something that's not a breach by some people. Certainly help Labour's growth agenda, because it would provide much needed fuel, but there are unnamed MPs quoted in this Guardian article saying this would be a breaking point for a lot of us, and another one saying we have to send a signal to workers, we know what any energy transition really means. So another potential split, just as we saw over Heathrow Airport. The fans of it say yes, it's vital for growth, and lots of Labour MPs say we're not putting up with this.
Well, I tell you, weaselly words, you know, like saying, oh no, we meant new. It's like the whole oh no, when we said workers, what we didn't mean was people who work. What we meant was something else, because they couldn't say. So a lot of weaselly words again, you know, finding a lie that fits within the truth, in my view. Interesting. It'd be interesting to see what Mr. Bacon Sandwich has got to say about it. I'm sure he's not very happy. But at the end of the day, as you said, growth and money. That's
and it's got to come from somewhere, and it's looking very hard to find at the moment, so that would be one way to do it.
Mind you, I don't know how it's going to fill our coffers, because all of our oil goes into a big pot, doesn't it, and is sold on the open market. We don't actually get it. We don't actually get the cheap oil. We sell it on the open market. Anyway, The Sun newspaper for Tuesday. Say Trees Mummy. Poignant Kate pic by Louis VI. I don't know if it's poignant. I don't know why we care that a 6-year-old has taken a photo of his mum. But The Sun do. I think we'll move on. Let's move on. UK cabinet tensions on Brexit migration deal for under-30s as Germany makes a new plea to Starmer. This is in the Eye. Striking a new deal with EU on youth mobility is now the subject of heated debate in the cabinet. Starmer has ruled out allowing extra migration for under-30s between Britain and Europe. Do you know what? I think when people voted Brexit, that's not what they meant. I don't think anyone in this country would mind under 30-year-olds coming over and working in our bars and restaurants for a couple of years to learn English and then go home. I don't think that's what people are upset about.
It isn't, but I think that Labour is so worried about the perception of allowing any freedom of movement, so under-30s or whoever they are coming into here, they can't endorse this. But it's not just that. What it denies by not allowing this scheme and by the lack of freedom of movement, it means that our under-30s can't go and have a fun year working in Paris or the south of France or a Greek island as a holiday rep or doing all those sort of jobs. All of that is out of their reach now, something that was allowed to me. I spent a very happy winter in a ski resort, working in a bar and that sort of thing, and those things are a lot harder to do now, and those jobs aren't available to people from the UK in the way that they used to once be because of Brexit. So it seems to me something that everybody would potentially support, but Labour is just so frightened of the government, so frightened of being seen as any scheme that would allow greater migration into the UK that it cannot endorse it.
Definitely not. But people who are upset about the boats coming over and the illegal migrants and the fact that criminals are in this country having come here illegally and then broken the law and then, you know, they're not being deported. That's what people are upset about, not 25-year-olds working in a bar in Birmingham.
No, and the hospitality industry is really struggling for all those people, cooks, chefs, bar people, people to work at music festivals and all the rest of it, desperately needed those people, and they've all not been allowed to work here, and it's causing huge problems, and actually it's forcing up the labour costs of many employers because they can't get that labour, and because there are fewer people around, they have to pay more, and that leads to inflation and adds to prices as well.
But all it does is prove to me that this government is absolutely tone deaf, that it is not listening to the public, it doesn't understand the public, it doesn't care what we mean, it has no nuance to it at all, it has no intelligence to figure this out. That is even worse for me. Anyway, Daily Mail. What a time to be crawling back to the EU. Keir Starmer last night vowed to continue trying to unpick Brexit, despite warnings that Britain will be dragged into a damaging trade war with the United States. So completely reverse of what the eye said.
Well, absolutely. I'm not sure how he is trying to unpick Brexit. I mean, to be fair to him, he has said that these things are off the table and the government isn't trying to unpick Brexit and isn't sort of suggesting a return to the single market and those sort of things. So not quite clear what the Mail's on about, but no fans of Keir Starmer at the best of times, so not surprised in some ways.
Yeah, not surprised. They're going to rattle shake the Brexit tree. The Daily Telegraph, Rayner to set rules on Islam and free speech. Tory Remainer-in-Chief lined up to advise on redefining Muslim discrimination. Can't read much of that because it's all a bit blurry. But that always upsets the apple cart as well. Oh, this story I wanted to talk about later on, actually. Council tax bills rise by up to 10% for millions. Now, councils are normally only allowed to raise their council tax by 5%. So this has been a political decision to allow councils to raise by really as much as they need. And in some cases, that's adding hundreds of pounds a year to people's council tax, and they're seeing nothing for it. You look at Bristol, once a month rubbish collection now, other areas the same. They're not fulfilling their jobs.
Yeah,
properly.
Huge rise. I mean, I think places like Bradford is one of them, and I think there's a few other places as well that are allowed to breach that kind of 5% increase that they're supposed to.
That'll be Rayner, won't it, that's allowed that?
Yeah. Yeah, and approving these big bills, and it's going to get to a point where some people are just going to find them unaffordable, and the suggestions, I think, in some of the other papers, that people may even just stop paying them because it's council tax bills are pretty high for most people anyway, and if they're going to rise 10%, then it's really pushing them into that level of an unaffordable bill. And this comes on the back of, we hear that water bills earlier in the week are going to be rising hugely. We know energy bills are going to be rising. So it's really hard on household budgets, and will further fuel inflation.
And also, what actually annoys me about this is that councils have been playing fast and loose with our money, investing in shopping centres and investing in things like that for their pension schemes, instead of leaving it to people who know what to do with investment money. They've been thinking that they're, you know, Billy Big Draws, and they've gone bust. And Birmingham's gone bust because it wasn't paying equal pay. Disgusting. That was legal, apparently, since the 1970s. So, you know, they go bust and we pick up the bill. I mean, that's always the problem. It's the same with the water companies.
And they're just not spending money wisely enough. They've got huge particularly on one of their big bills is on housing, temporary housing, because so many people are either because they're dealing with migrants or because people are being kicked out of their rented housing or can't afford their rented housing. So they've got spiralling housing bills, spiralling social care costs, but they're also spending an awful lot of money on schemes that frankly most people wouldn't support. So when people see money being spent on low traffic neighbourhood schemes and those sort of things, people think, well, hang on,
Rainbow crossings,
exactly,
cost thousands.
And councils, most of them just don't keep a tight enough grip on what's effectively at the end of the day taxpayers' money.
Well, and also they're big fat salaries and they're massive pensions.
Well, the pensions is something at some point they're going to have to address, because this is the huge one of the huge costs for councils. I think is it £1 in 4 or £1 in 3 is literally servicing their massive gold-plated pensions, and they're unsustainable, and something has to be done about reforming those.
Yeah, well, we'll see. The Daily Express, yet another teenager killed, 15-year-old boy knifed to death in a school attack. The teenager was stabbed 3 times in a lunchtime assault. This is up in Sheffield, I believe, and police swooped in to arrest another 15-year-old boy's teachers, ushered terrified pupils to safety. The victim was named last night as Harvey Wilgoose, and the suspect was being questioned on suspicion of murder. This is at All Saints Catholic High School in Sheffield. The paramedics pronounced the Year 11 pupil dead at the scene. Absolutely horrifying. It's hard to imagine, first of all, how a child gets a knife into school and what happened in the lunchtime that created this.
Yeah, it sounds as though there'd been some unrelated or potentially related, but as far as we know, unrelated trouble at the school a few days earlier. But it's a terrible thing that's happening all over the country. There was a 14-year-old girl in Wales that was convicted of attempted murder with a knife. So knife crime issues just out of control, really. And
so young. The kids are so young. It's horrifying. Yeah. Absolutely horrifying. Daily Star. Hunt for the leader of the 3 worlds errant cerebrum. So how do you say that? Cerebrum.
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 Yeah.
Whatever. I don't know. Yeah. Brain. Basically, can't say the word. Missing brain. A worldwide hunt has been launched for Donald Trump's tiny brain after it escaped from his head and made him say more crazy stuff about tariffs. And they've got a picture of an orange brain there on the front of the paper. So I like the fact that they just totally have a go. Last spotted being bat thingy crazy, sparking a global trade war, spooking financial markets and accusing baffled Britain of being out of line. That's what he said. We were out of line.
Yes.
Although I think that was a word freeze. He meant the EU. And then he had to double down and say the UK.
Yeah. Oh, we seem to be doing okay under the trade stuff with Trump at the moment. So fingers crossed we escape most of his ire. Oh,
and that's the story as well that's interesting, is that Spanish football head of the Spanish FA, wasn't it, that kissed that football player. He's in court today.
Yes. And what's interesting about that so far is the football player involved, one, has made it very clear that she did not want to be kissed on the lips by him, but also saying that, really interestingly, after it happened, his allies tried to pressure her into not making a big deal out of it. And they tried to put the squeeze on her, as it were, literally, as he did, put the squeeze on her and try and get it to go away. But he's potentially facing, I think, a couple of years in jail if he's convicted, so pretty serious stuff.
It really has, and I think that it exploded again because he was so blasé about it, and so kind of like, well, so what, you know, she wanted it type of attitude.
Yeah, and she said it ruined, one of the greatest days of her life, which I'm sure it did. It's a fascinating case. It
is, and to see it in court, there'll be lots of people saying, well, it should never have got to court. All he did was kiss her in a over exuberant moment, a bit like Elon Musk. All he did was throw her.
But they've got that picture. It was a real kiss on the lips, and he did grabbed her face. So it wasn't just a sort of...
She had no choice. She couldn't get away from it.
A Hollywood air kiss where he brushed her cheek or something. No. It really was a sort of invasive...
It was a proper snog.
Yeah.
And that is Jennifer Humoso and Louis Rubiales. I was going to say Rubio, but that's the American guy. Louis Rubiales, that's right. He is in court today. Right, we've got to take a break, but we will be back.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there. You're with Petrie and with Vincent Moss, former political editor, and we're going through Tuesday's newspapers for you. Markets rebound after Sheinbaum's talk with Trump brings tariffs pause. This is the Mexican leader. She's doing a cracking job, I think. She seems to be, doesn't she? She seems to be on it.
Yes.
But anyway, as you say, we don't know what the Mexican side of this story is. But the Mexican president said Trump had delayed the 25% tariffs after she agreed to send 10,000 National Guard troops to the border with the US to combat drug trafficking. It was a good conversation with respect, she said. It's about collaboration, coordination without losing sovereignty. But again, a lot of people will see that as backing down, as giving in, and that's what he's going to say, isn't it?
He can, but her body language, a picture of her on the front of the Financial Times, is grinning like a proverbial Cheshire cat.
Yeah.
She seems very happy with it.
Yeah.
So maybe she is genuinely happy, or she's as good at him at spinning the outcome, because it seems to me that she's got her way, because as we say, I mean, I'm sure there's quite a few troops at the border anyway. A few more will go up. How long will they stay there for? She's wrung a commitment from him to deal with some of the weapons coming into Mexico. So it looks as though she's had a pretty good result too.
Yeah, and the same can be said of Trudeau, the outgoing Prime Minister of Canada. Trump feels happy with what he's got. Canada literally are saying we've given him nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, keep it quiet, but we've given him nothing. So, all right, if he's happy with that.
Do you think people are going to see through this tactic of shouting and pretending you've won things and actually nothing's changed?
I think so. I mean, and also the whole the little boy who cried wolf will be Trump.
Yes.
A lot of people go, he didn't mean it. What does he want? Okay, what does he want? What do you want, Don? Right,
Yeah.
You want what? You want free Coca-Cola? All right, we'll do that. We'll do that. It's. I don't know if it makes him. I mean, he's going to say it makes him look strong. I don't think it does make him look strong.
No, although these are really just on pause, these things for a month. So let's see what happens in a month's time. I mean, I suspect probably not a great deal, not least because the FT headline talks about markets rebounding. Well, the American stock market did start to fall pretty sharply after it looked as though this trade war would happen. So, yeah,
of course. I mean, of course it's going to have a massive impact. So the Financial Times also said Thames Water hits fresh resistance to $3 billion funding. They're saying it's not enough. Is that right? Great.
Yes, I think they want even more money. I mean, and it is a cliche of literally pouring. It's a broken company and it's just pouring more money down the drain. But what's the alternative? The government can't afford to exactly.
But the thing is, they were borrowing money to give to shareholders. That should be illegal.
Yes, they
Why
were borrowing
isn't
money
that illegal?
to give it in the form of dividends instead of mending leaks and fixing broken water mains.
I mean, fair enough to borrow money to fix things, but it should be illegal to borrow money to give it in dividends and then ask us to pay the loan back.
Yeah.
I mean, that is absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, you'd have thought so. And people are trying to deal with the water companies, but it all feels as though it's a little bit too late and should have been taken on this years and years ago.
But the thing is that if you live in London and Greater London and even wider, you don't have a choice. Thames Water is it. I can't suddenly go, well, actually, I'd rather use Scottish water, thank you.
No, I'd rather use Scottish. I'm the same. I live in central London and all I know is that the bills are going to go up £123 on average or something like that from Thames Water. And for what? For a worsening service, where, as you say, all the money being channelled off, or certainly was in the past, into the form of dividends.
And I don't think there's anything in place to stop it being funnelled off in the future either.
Yeah, crazy, isn't it?
It is because they're considered too big to fail.
Yeah.
And it's just so unfair to us consumers. We're always picking up the tab for other people's mistakes, for other people wrecking it.
People making millions out of taxpayer money.
Yeah, exactly. Dangerous fool who put lives at risk. This is the front of the Metro. This is the soldier, Daniel Khalifi, who has been handed 14 years in jail for spying for Iran and escaping from prison. And he refused until the middle of the trial to admit he escaped from prison. He didn't want to plead guilty. There's literally photographs of him outside of prison. But the judge was saying, look, you went into the army early, you were an exemplary soldier, and then you became a dangerous fool. What was this about? And he said he wanted to be a spy, he wanted to work for MI5.
Crazy, isn't it? And as I think it was his defence brief said, more Scooby-Doo than James Bond, and that certainly seems
no
like
excuse,
it was.
is it?
Yes, well, that was it. But although he did actually sell pass on some sensitive information, so he deserves the term that he got. I don't live too far from Wandsworth Prison, and it's had lots of problems with staffing and things like that. But
yes, wasn't it that true on that day that he escaped under the food truck that 80% of the guards were not there?
Yeah, it was a huge
It was
amount.
a huge.
Yeah,
I think it was 80% of the prison guards were not at work.
Yeah, they were sick or hadn't turned up, and the proper checks weren't carried out. And he got out underneath a delivery lorry. It was crazy. So, in some ways, it's a pretty sort of astonishing to escape from any high security jail. But he was caught fairly quickly. No, he got away with it a few days, didn't he? And he was pictured in a few shops, bizarrely looking as we are now at newspapers. There was sort of stories about him.
Well, because he
escape.
loves the attention. I mean, that is the other thing. He's this Walter Mitty character, isn't he? He wanted to be this famous escapee, so he was just checking to see if he was on the front page, which indeed he was. Yeah. And then he was found in Chiswick, wasn't he? On the
towpath, on a canal towpath, wasn't he? Riding a stolen bicycle. Yes.
Yeah. So not that clever. Probably not good spy material, one would argue. No. But yeah, he said that he had turned spy. This is how stupid this boy is. He turned spy in a bid to become an MI6 double agent. How did he think that was going to work? I mean, what went on in that head to say, I know, I'll sell some stuff to Iran, MI6 will then take me on, and I'll become James Bond?
Yeah, definitely a fool and not a very good spy.
Well, as the judge said, Mrs. Justice Chima Grubb said, a dangerous fool. You're an absolute idiot. And she said, you could have put people's lives at risk. You were in, this is serious, mate.
Yes.
I don't know what you thought you were doing. The Daily Mirror. A very nice picture there of Michelle Keegan, looking forward to her first child with her husband, Mark somebody, can't remember his name. Anyway, good for her. And again, Mark Wright, of course, it's Mark Wright.
Yes, famous Essex, yes.
Yeah.
Famous Essex man.
From The Only Way is Essex.
Yeah.
Towie, big fan?
No, I'm not a big fan. Just about know that much about him.
I used to watch it. I thought it was hilarious. I did not know it was World Cancer Day. Did we know it was World Cancer Day today?
Yes, I think it's one of those things, isn't it, where everybody knows not just one person, but so many people who've had cancer. So any action to sort of try and mitigate the impact of that's got to be a good thing, raise the profile of all the charity fundraising work that goes on.
Yeah, and again, showing that photograph of Kate taken by her 6-year-old. Princess gives advice on coping with cancer and a new high-tech breast screening for over 50s. The Princess of Wales stands tall, a symbol of hope on World Cancer Day. The photograph taken by Louis. And everybody's now saying he's the most marvellous photographer that ever lived.
I suspect she probably set the camera up for him and had a flunky.
Yes, and perhaps somebody was standing there pressing the button, if indeed it was a proper old camera and not one of those modern ones. It's probably got on his mobile phone.
True.
But anyway, World Cancer Day. It's good to remember that, and it's good that Kate is still talking about it. I suppose that is a good thing. Right, that is the papers. I think that was the Mirror. I just wanted to go back to The Guardian, if I can, this is power dressing, why style matters in Trump 2.0. Just very quickly, I think all he's done is change his tie. Trump, he's wearing a blue tie now occasionally. Is that power dressing in your view? I mean, you are power dressing tonight.
Well, yes, exactly. I mean, I would have thought he looks the same to me, really. All I do know is he has those suits specially made because he's quite a large
he's
gentleman.
A chunky chap.
And, but the way the suits are cut...
What's pay attention to the back of them? Have you seen him at the back? You can see his rather large bottom.
Ah, no, I haven't seen his bottom.
It creases.
You can see he's quite a large bloke when he plays golf, can't you? But he looks all right in a suit. Like many men, a suit can hide a lot of ills.
Yeah, it certainly can. Somebody needs to have a word with his makeup artist, though. That's what I would say. Vincent, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. Vincent Moss, former political editor. Right, coming up, it's between you and me now, and we're talking about foreign aid. And, of course, that's because the US, or Muskrat, Mr. Musk, Elon, has decided that the USA department should be completely shut down, and Donald Trump has agreed. $40 billion a year is what they were giving in foreign aid. It's not very much in terms of GDP, but we give about 13 billion a year. Again, not very much with GDP of our GDP. Is it important that we continue to give this money, or would you like to follow the states in just stopping?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. How are you this morning? It is February, thank goodness. I just spoke to my son earlier on, and he said that was a 6-week month, Mum. That was not fair. And I think we're all feeling that, aren't we? Thank goodness January is gone. And I just want February to be nicer, just a little bit. Just a little bit. Some nice news, perhaps. Something jolly and fun that we can talk about, like Scotland trying to ban cats. That would have been fun. But they're not going to, so we couldn't do that one. So coming up in this hour, and it's your hour, right? This is what I need to impress upon you. This is all about you and your voices. And I really enjoy this hour because of the different opinions, the different stories, the different things that we have happen in this hour. It's very, very special to me. And I hope it is to you too, because nowhere else on the station does it now. There is nowhere else that clears an hour of guests. It's all gone and just wants to hear from you, to give you the chance to talk back. And there is so much going on in the world at the moment that I think these conversations that we have are incredibly important, because we listen to each other. This is a space that is safe. Nobody takes the mick out of you. Nobody's going to shout at you. And we're polite, and we have what's known, I think in the olden terms, as a grown-up conversation. So the conversation I'd like to have with you this morning is about foreign aid, because this is coming now, right? Because of what the US has done, you know, the US sneezes and we catch a cold, it is likely that this conversation will gain traction. And that is when you see the US of A completely stop US aid in its tracks. The organisation that does it, everything gone. People were told not to come into work. 600 workers in the building were told not to come in. The heads of that department have been suspended. 10,000 other workers, I don't know where they work, but presumably they've been told to work remotely. On what, I don't know, because all funds have been immediately suspended. Now, this was at the behest of Elon Musk, who, after a very short period of time, a couple of days it would seem, decided that this was a corrupt and criminal organisation and the whole thing needed to be thrown away. Now, the danger is, of course, you do throw the baby out with the bathwater, but there will be many people on this side of the Atlantic saying, that's what we should do. That's what we should do. We should just suspend our aid, not send it to anybody anymore. But is that really what you think? Is it a little bit more nuanced than that? I mean, I agree. Look, it shouldn't be being sent to China, right? Not only because China doesn't need the money, but also it itself is a revolting regime that has not got human rights anywhere near its heart. So I am for that, right? Any country that doesn't put human rights at the forefront should not get a single penny from this country, in my view, right? Sodom. That's what I'd say. China, you don't need our money, you don't want our money, and frankly, you don't deserve it, right? India, with a space program, who's already turned to us and said, look, we don't really want your money. They have actually said that. And we're still sending, not very much. I mean, a couple of $100 million. I mean, could you live on that, really? Anyway, a couple of $100 million. So there are countries, I agree, that have no business getting foreign aid money. And there are a lot of corrupt countries that we know that will just take this money, say thank you very much, and then buy a mansion and make the taps gold, right? We know that as well. But do we actually mean that we should stop funding some people? And if we should fund some people, who would you fund? I mean, for example, I don't know if we give any money to Afghanistan. I hope we don't. Can we just check that? Do we give any money to Afghanistan? Then we need to stop immediately, because what they're doing is disgusting, vile. I have words, but I can't use them without getting an Ofcom and possibly fired. But there are countries we shouldn't be giving money to. But is there a way that between us adults we can figure out how or where our foreign aid money should be spent? It really is a tiny amount of money. No. Humanitarian, oh, we do. Oh, that's good. So we do give humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan. As long as you're not a woman or a girl. Are women and girls humans? Yeah, I think they are, but not in Afghanistan, obviously. Well, that's hacked me right off. But anyway, who do we give foreign aid to? And what do we want that foreign aid to do? I think that's a more grown-up conversation than just saying that we should just stop it. It doesn't go to anybody. But maybe you think that that is the case, because after all these years of giving out all this money, what have we achieved? I mean, it's hard to prove the negative, right? We may have reduced migration, immigrants coming into Europe and into the UK, but obviously not by much, since we've seen the numbers. We may have, I don't know, stopped a few diseases, which is brilliant, and that's exactly what we should be doing for countries who can't afford, for example, Ebola care or other diseases, typhoid, all of those things that we help other countries with. Do we really need to be completely heartless? And if you think we do, fine. Your opinion is as valid as the next person. 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at national rate. And you can text me as well. Put the word talk up front and your message to 87222. So, do we follow America and just say, no, gone, we're not doing it? Or do we, while we can, have a conversation about who and where should get this assistance? Give me a call. This is about your voices, so make sure you use it. Tony has called from Lancashire. Good morning, Tony.
Good evening, Petrie. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad.
Good.
I'm trying to keep going, but it can be hard work.
Oh, tell me about it. Yeah. Especially this horrible weather, isn't it?
About this foreign aid.
Yeah.
I know it can go. How about helping the injured soldiers and veterans?
In this country?
Yeah.
But the government should be doing that anyway.
Pardon?
The government should be doing that anyway. We've got enough money, by the way. We are the fifth richest nation on the planet. The reason that these veterans are not getting that help is a political decision. It is a decision that has been made by somebody somewhere. We are not short of money. It's spent in the wrong places for what we want. We're not short of money.
I agree with that.
So stopping this 12 billion, it's not like we've got no money, and although we haven't got any money because it's spent wrong, but this is, and this 12 billion is the last thing in the pot, and we're going, oh, blimey, we've got to give that to someone else. That's not the way it actually is. This is a decision made by various governments to spend money in ways that you and I cannot fathom on things that we don't need. And that's why we've got no money.
Well, we do need certain things, actually. What about our streets and back alleys where are full of crap because council won't pick up... Well, they do pick up the rubbish. It's the people, sorry, itself being blooming lazy and not giving a flaming damn.
You're right. But councils, again, you look at councils as a microcosm of a government, right? So these local councils, local government, which is what they are given a certain amount of money every year from government, from us, from the taxpayer. Then they charge us council tax, so we then give them our share of the money. And they waste it. They spend it on absolute nonsense. The councils, then they come back to us for more money. There is money. They've got money, but they waste it. And that's the problem. That's why the streets are dirty, not because of the foreign aid budget, right?
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? These local councils, they've got the money. They make sure they get big fat salaries, huge salaries, more than the Prime Minister. They make sure that their pensions are gold and diamond plated. They then make sure that they can't be sacked. They then take your money and play roulette with it. And invest in buildings and things that they've got no business doing. Then that falls over and they've got no money, and then they come back to us for more money. That's why the councils don't work.
It's absolutely a flaming joke, it is.
It is. It's pathetic.
And can I just ask one thing, which I'm getting a bit confused with? Right, with this Ukraine war, right? How long has it been now? It's been a number of years now. What, 4 years?
Since what, sorry?
This Ukraine war with Russia.
Oh, the Ukraine, yeah, it's coming up to 3 years. Yeah, it's about 3 years now.
Right, how much has it been altogether, what we give you to try and help Ukraine to win the war?
Oh, billions. And we will keep doing that because they're holding Russia.
Right, two things. Right, are we lending the money to Ukraine or are we giving the money to Ukraine? Because on that hand, if we're lending, are we going to get that money back off Ukraine? Like it's not long ago, we paid America our debt to America not long ago. So are they going to do same or not? Because if they're not going to repay us back, I think I should stop that at all.
My understanding is we are giving Ukraine the money. And hang on. But it won't be for nothing. It will be British companies, according to size of gift, aid, support, whatever we give to Ukraine, British companies will get billions of pounds worth of money to rebuild Ukraine. So it'll be a long time, but it'll be British businesses, British builders, British whatever going in there and rebuilding the country.
They pay us back, really.
Well, they will pay us back, but in a different way.
Well, yeah. Right, I'll see it when I believe it when I see it. Right, about China, just quick one more thing about China. Right, about COVID thing, right? They didn't have that COVID under control, and I think this country should sue China because he got told, China, I believe, it was some, I don't know, some bloody factory or something. They got told to get handle of it, but they never did.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it is widely understood now and believed, I think it's been proved, that the COVID was in a Chinese lab. We'll never sue China. We'll never sue them because we're in debt to them. We need them.
What confuses me, quickly. Right, it's just not long ago we had Rachel Reeves going to flaming China, yeah? Well, hold on. Who's supplying weapons to flaming Russia? Flipping heck.
I know. None of it makes any sense. I completely agree with you. But we won't sue China because we're dependent on China. We're dependent on the trade with China. We're dependent on the stuff that they send. I mean, look at the way that we cozy up to them, despite their appalling human rights records. You know, you can do what you like as long as you're powerful, right?
I think this country's gone too bloody soft, if you ask me.
Well, I don't think we're going to stiffen up any with Mr. Jelly Spine, are we, as our Prime Minister?
No, I think Keir Starmer should be sacked and bloody rest of them. Oh, on it, to be honest.
Listen, do you know what, Tony? I feel your frustration, and I think a lot of people agree with you on that, but we're not tough anymore. We're a tiny little island. We've got nothing. We got nothing. We're tiny. We're stuck.
Can I just say quickly, I'm watching that first documentary tonight on Channel 4, Go Back Where You Come From, right?
Oh, that's a good name for a documentary. Yeah, okay.
And, like, it looks like Keir Starmer is weakening the system to let out migrants come in. Well, how is it going to work? Because we haven't got the capacity, you know, with no room, you know, and yet we've got these benefit system going on. Like to give people like me, because I'm on benefits, I can't go to work, because like it's not long ago I had an heart attack, I nearly died. It was a severe heart attack, got 2 stents in my heart, leakage valve in my heart's infected, and I had got ruptured kidney, my liver's damaged, and I had one of my toes amputated. And yet they want about getting his vouchers. How about stopping, firstly, giving all these illegals on benefits? That'll save them some money there.
Well, hang on. Illegals don't get benefits.
I heard that they did.
They don't. You've heard wrong, mate. They're not entitled. They're not entitled. They're just not. The illegal migrants are not entitled to claim any benefits. Full stop. End of story. They are not entitled. What they are entitled to is to be housed and fed and looked after, but they're not entitled under any circumstances, to claim benefits. So that's one thing. Maybe you'll sleep a little bit better knowing that.
I will, but
Maybe.
But I'm sure I heard on Kevin Hawthorne's show.
Yeah, but they're not entitled to claim benefits. If you just go onto the government webpage, it'll say immediately, illegal migrants are not entitled to claim benefits.
Yeah, but I can't say I've no internet. But this is another thing. They're getting free iPhones and stuff like that, though. How are they getting all that lot then?
Well, I don't think they're getting free iPhones. I don't know where that has come from. They probably have got them and they've come over with them. I don't think we're handing out free iPhones. We're probably handing out a bit of credit so they can make phone calls. But I don't think, I'm fairly certain that we're not giving them iPhones. Because, again, that would be nuts, wouldn't it? I mean, that would be crackers. So, no, there's a lot of rubbish talked, really, to make you hate them. So you blame them for everything that's going wrong in this country and you don't blame the government in power.
Fair point.
Fair point. Look, are they costing a lot of money? Yes. Should they be in this country? They're illegal? No. But
no, because we can't take everybody in this country. This country can only hold so much.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, we're not full. The amount of the country. Do you know the percentage of this country that's actually built on?
Go on.
You guess first.
I don't know, to be honest. Go on.
Have a guess.
What question again? Sorry.
How much of the land mass of the UK is actually built on? What would you think? About
10, 20. No, I'm just guessing.
Yeah, really. You're bang on. 10%. 10%. Well, and actually, if you include gardens and parks, 3%. So we're not full, right?
That's a way of looking at it. I never thought of it that way. But
we're not full. I mean, look, we don't want any more illegal people to come here, but I'm just saying that we're not full. I mean, it feels like we're full, especially if you live in a town or a city or, anything like that. But we're not.
How come some media make it out that we are, though?
I don't know. Because they don't like facts.
Well, we should bloody put the facts out.
Oh, Tony, you are a breath of fresh air. I love you. Thank you for calling in. I've got to take a break. I'll be back in a second.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning to you. I've just been reading about Afghanistan, which I think we should cut off immediately from any money. I don't want any of my taxpayers' money going to that regime, the way they treat women. UK aid for Afghanistan has now fallen back to the level seen before the Taliban takeover. In March 23, the Development Minister Andrew Mitchell announced a combined ODA budget for Afghanistan and Pakistan for the financial year 23-24 to 141.9 million, which is less than the previous year's budget. The UK's planned bilateral support for Afghanistan in 2024 to 25 is 151 million. It's disgusting. Why are we supporting the Taliban? Why are we supporting a regime that treats women like they are nothing? That should be stopped. They don't agree with any of our freedoms. They don't believe in any of our rights. They don't believe in anything that a human being would believe in sensibly, and we're giving them money. That is where I draw the line. That country, those people, those men deserve nothing. They're not spending it on the women. Women aren't even allowed to talk in public. They're not allowed to leave the flipping house. So what's that money being spent on? A regime that treats women like they're nothing. Disgusting. And I do think that that's where we should not be sending money. Why send money into regimes that have nothing but hatred and everything else poisonous in their hearts? Why? So when you say, oh, China shouldn't get it, or India shouldn't get it, Afghanistan shouldn't get it. Absolutely not. Not my money. Right, let's have a look at some messages. I think giving to other countries is a good thing to do, but not when you feel the need to cut fuel benefits for pensions, etc. Our country is falling apart at the seams. We need to get our own house in order first. And I agree with that. But it's got nothing to do with that 12 billion. Our GDP is 639.5 billion. 639.5 billion. 12 billion is a drop in the ocean. So with that other 627 billion, the political decision has been to remove winter fuel allowance. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not the fault of the 12 billion that this government is crying poverty, or the last government, or whoever. They've got 627.5 billion if you take off foreign aid. Oh, and also some of that foreign aid budget is being spent on housing illegal people in this country, which is the right thing to do with foreign aid. In fact, all of it, half of it, should be spent on the illegal migrants that come to this country. Again, in my view. So that's a political decision. It's not a financial one. I don't care what they say. We've got the money. We're the 5th richest nation in the world. Cutting back on old people was a political decision that didn't need to be made fiscally. In fact, it wasn't worth anything fiscally, really. Because hopefully they'll lose more money now the pensioners are having to go on to benefits in order to get their winter fuel allowance. So it'll be worth nothing. Barry says Canada spends $8 billion on defence with a GDP of 2.5 trillion. It depends on the USA for defence. It does indeed. It has huge trade surplus with the USA. and it's been taking a lend. Trump is justified. But you can't... If Canada is producing stuff that America wants to buy, how is that having a lend? I don't understand that. That's capitalism. And maybe if America didn't produce chlorinated chicken and expect their people to eat it, and whatever other poisons they put into their food and expect their people to eat, maybe other countries would want to buy it, right? It's capitalism. You produce something people want and somebody else buys it. How is it the fault of Canada if America doesn't want their stuff? So therefore creating this deficit that has upset Trump so much. It's the same with the EU. He's calling them criminal because the EU has food standards and it doesn't want to buy American food, and they don't want American cars. That's not criminal. That's market forces, right? Or am I missing something? It's not taking the mick to not want to buy what somebody else is producing. You and I do it every day. If I'm looking for a washing machine, I know who I want to buy it from and who I don't want to buy it from. It doesn't make me a criminal if I don't buy an American one, does it? If I choose a German one because I think it's better made or I think it's easier to repair, I don't see how that... I don't understand that. That's capitalism, baby, isn't it? You buy what you want to buy and you don't buy what you don't want to buy. It doesn't make you a criminal. And Europe doesn't want to buy a lot of American stuff, American food products. And we'll buy some oranges. They're nice. They probably haven't been injected with anything. I don't know, maybe. We might buy some, but then we grow our own oranges. Why, if we grow oranges, why would we want to buy somebody else's? And that doesn't make you a criminal. And this is what I don't understand with Trump. He seems to think that because Europe isn't buying a lot of stuff from America, that they're somehow in the wrong. And America wants to buy a lot of stuff from Europe because Europe's obviously producing stuff that Americans want to buy. So I don't get that argument. It makes no sense to me. None of us should be forced. Do you remember when they tried to bring chlorinated chicken? We did a trade deal with America to have chlorinated chicken. And the British public went, no, I'm not eating that rubbish. I don't want to eat that. So we don't have it, right? We won't buy shoddy stuff. So make better stuff and we might buy it. That's what I would like to say. Let's take a break. I'll be back in a minute and I'll be talking to David from Belfast.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, good morning to you. It's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And David has called from Belfast. So I'm going to hear the lovely Belfast accent now. I'm very happy. David.
Hello, Bird. How are you?
Oh, how are you?
How are you?
How are you? I love it. I'm very well. I'm much better now I'm hearing your fabulous accent.
Aye, well, sure, we're talking about Elon Musk resetting the money that they're going to send out in funding, right, to the rest of the world.
Yep.
And, well, his computer says no. He's pressing Control Alt Delete, reset and update. You know, so he's told the rest of the world there's no money coming through because he's just done what Elon Musk does on a computer and says, right, we'll reset this, we'll have a look at it, and we'll see what comes up. You know.
Wouldn't the normal way of doing things would be to say, look, you're on notice, we're going to be digging through the files, carry on as normal?
Well, I think he's a computer geek, and he's got engineering experts, and he'll reset what he sees over the last 20 years what America's been doing, right? And
he's not resetting the aid he gets from the American government, though, is he?
No, he isn't. But he's resetting what his vision could be. You know, and Musk is closing down everything, and he's going to think again, and he'll update it. You know, so like. If America's been handing out money for 20 years, why shouldn't it be thought over again?
I don't have a problem with that. I genuinely don't have a problem with looking at where aid goes and what good it's doing, but you do that before you suspend all aid, because there will be people, and maybe he's such a computer geek that he doesn't care about human beings. It's just all robotics and computers. But
he's fallen into Trump's fold, and let's think about this. It might take a day. Trump makes decisions in an hour.
Yeah, it does flip-flop, doesn't it?
It could take Elon Musk with artificial intelligence to do it in half the time, you know. So I think it's.
But look how he destroyed Twitter, and Trump is trusting this man with American finances, and also he doesn't have the right actually to close this down. This was approved by Congress and is outside of politics, and now Donald Trump wants to bring it into the State Department, which means that only his friends will get money, and that's not the point.
Okay, well, let's look at Stammer. Let's look at the whole Labour Party. They can't make a decision to save our lives. You know?
Well, they think saying nothing is making a decision, don't they?
Yeah, well, sure. He's smoking mirrors, you know. Like he would tell you one thing one day, and then, you know, it was like 300 quid for the pensioners. I'm doing away with that. I'm doing away with this. And then he'll throw another spanner in the works. He's just a typical lawyer, Stammer.
Yeah, and also we can see he's a lawyer because he goes through the sort of fine print, doesn't he? Like this oil field, saying, "Oh no, well we can get away with that because we only said we wouldn't give new licenses." So he's being a lawyer about that.
Stammer will put something up, as a big deal, right? And that's what he wants. but then he'll throw three spanners in the works, like we're taking away the money from the army, and X, Y, and Z, so that the direction is taken away from. I'll give you the biggest example from the grooming gangs. So he's threw about 3 or 4 things out there to take away from the grooming gangs, you know, and everybody misses it. And they're jumping on they're going to take away money from the army, they're going to take away money from pensioners, and to take away from his reaction to the grooming gangs.
Yeah, I mean, it's typical sort of kitten, isn't it? They're distracting us with one thing, and then they'll distract us with, you know, people on benefits. Ooh, those wretched people.
You know something? I'm not a lover of Tommy Robinson, but Tommy Robinson was in top of the grooming gangs 10 years ago. And, you know, he's locked up in jail. I'm not a lover of him or anything.
No, I mean, I have to say, look, whatever you think of him, he messed with the courts, and you can't do that because you can't. It's against the law. It's I can't do it. I can't. If there's a court case in progress, I can't say that bloke over there, John Smith, he is guilty. He did it, and that's what Tommy Robinson did, because the court was in progress. You can't do that, because then that guy gets to walk.
I totally agree. Tommy Robinson did it the wrong way, but he was the first one to bring it out. And now, a month and a half ago, it was all brought to the forefront, and then Labour started jumping on other things to try
and distract us. Yeah.
Distract us.
Do you know what, David? I'm glad you rang today, because, just changing the subject slightly, we know that Northern Ireland has been without government for a long time. Is it running any better now you have a government?
We've never had a government.
No, they were back at Stormont now, aren't they? Aren't they working again now?
In 1911, Winston Churchill was going to blow us up, but we just happened to have an army of 100,000 men in the First World War, and he changed his tune, and that 100,000 marched into the Battle of the Somme.
Yeah. Never to be seen again. But I was just interested, because I know Northern Ireland, there was, you know, there couldn't be an agreement on sharing power and all of that, and I just wondered if it's working any better now you do have a government, but clearly not.
No, will I tell you? The best government we could have is, and I think I spoke to you a few weeks ago, and it says 5 million Chinese will sort it out.
Yeah, within a day, I would have thought as well. David, it's lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much. You do bring me joy. Thank you. Phil is in Hull, and he's a new caller. Phil, good morning.
Hello, Petrie. How are you? I'm
good, thank you. How are you doing?
Yes, I am a first-time caller, so you'll have to go steady with me.
Oh, I'm always kind to everybody. Don't you worry about that.
Yeah. I hope your back's first and you bite. No, it's this is quite an emotive subject, this one, whenever it comes up. And I always think, why don't they use the foreign aid budget to solely provide aid, and by that actually give physical stuff to these countries that require it? And then I would also ensure that whatever that thing is, so I think earlier on you said one of the aims was to provide renewable energies to these countries. So provide them with solar panel and wind turbines, but make sure they're all British-made in British factories, and then they're installed by British workers in whatever country then requires them. So at least we would then see some return for our money, as opposed to just handing over a lump sum of money.
I absolutely don't. I can't find a fault with that argument. I think that it's the old argument, isn't it? Give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day. Give a man a fishing rod and he'll eat for as long as you can. And I do kind of agree with that. And we could send experts out there to deal with, keeping the stuff, teaching people about the engineering of these things and replacing parts and all of that. I think that is a sensible idea. It's kind of the thing that WaterAid do. They're an NGO.
Right, yeah, when I'm thinking like irrigation and wells and things like that, I'm going back to Band-Aid and all the rest of it. That's what we did in Ethiopia, didn't it? We provided them with the water wells. But maybe things that are sellable as well, so more like infrastructure and like you say, teaching people how to do things. And also like bigger picture stuff then. We're worried about people coming to this country. If we could make other people's countries more habitable for them, maybe they won't want to come to this country so much as well. So, bigger picture stuff, it might have a knock-on effect there as well.
Phil, you're absolutely right, again, because that is one of the principles of foreign aid. But I just think it's completely spaffed in the wrong ways. Like you said, it's given in brown envelopes and in cash and all of this, and it doesn't get to the people it's supposed to get to. And I think you're right that it should be more nuanced. And one of the major issues, they always say, look, if we help a country grow or develop or, provide for itself, then we are likely to get fewer migrants. And that is the aim, right? So if their country's working and it's brilliant, they're not going to want to leave. I don't believe that people want to leave a successful country, right?
No, absolutely. No.
They don't want to leave a country that's run well, where there's human rights, where there's healthcare. They don't want to leave that. Why would they bother? So if we can improve other people's standards, but I think with you that we're doing it largely in the wrong way, because otherwise, why isn't it working?
Yeah, because if it is lumps, like you say, if it is in brown envelopes, it's lump sums of money. We know where that money's going, and it's going nowhere near the people who require it.
Nowhere near.
Yeah, and it's the same with even if it's like food and things like that, we also that can make its way into places. But I say if it is if it's infrastructure, if it is things like solar panels and wind turbines, at least if we've seen them installed, we know where there was, we know that there was in the areas that there was required in. I think people would get behind that a lot more, and then obviously we would see, the tax side of things, because it was all produced in this country, we would see the benefits there as well. So I think there'd certainly be a lot more people pro that than just handing over money.
I absolutely and completely agree. And one of the other problems that has always been, Phil, with foreign aid is that we lose sight of it. We give a country a couple of $100 million. We have no clue. There's no real indication of what that money has been spent on. And again, I think if we could see improvements in countries, if we could see that children were getting proper health care and therefore, birth rates came down. They didn't have to have so many children because so many die. That's why they have big families.
Yeah, mortality rate.
If we could improve education in those countries, if we can help with people setting up micro businesses and supporting themselves, that's what it's supposed to be for. I don't know why we've sort of lost our way on it a bit.
Well, I can't believe in 5 minutes, Petrie, we sorted out between us.
Do you know what?
It's such a logical solution.
It is.
Why aren't they getting it?
Well, we should rule the world.
Yeah.
Let's give Daddy Donny a call and see if he'll let us take over America. See if we can fix that as quickly. I'm sure we can.
Yeah. Give us another 5 minutes, though, and we'll see what we can do. But I think between us, we'll put this one to bed.
5 minutes. That's all we needed, Phil.
Okay. Right. Lovely to talk to you. I'll talk to you again.
And you. Give me a call again, will you? It was a great call. Right. Let's take a break. Back in a second.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, good morning to you. We're having conversations about clocks. That's how we roll in here. It's very exciting. But anyway, we are talking, you and I, about US aid and it just being stopped dead in its tracks. And I genuinely hope that there isn't, you know, an immediate catastrophic reaction to that from some poor person in a different country. But that got us talking about our own aid budget and where and how it should be spent. And Phil from Hull there saying, look, you know, there are ways that we can help countries. It doesn't involve just giving them a bunch of cash, right? And as for food, you do that as an emergency measure, don't you? Sort of say, right, well, there's a problem in I don't know, I'm just going to choose Yemen, so let's spend some of that 12 billion on a, you know, 100 million pounds worth of food, and we'll fly it over so we can respond to catastrophes in that way. But as a long-term fix, it doesn't seem right to just say, look, here's some money, because that isn't working. We don't know where that money goes. They say there is oversight, but there really isn't oversight. It's impossible to know where that money goes and how it's spent. And we should know. We should know more. And also, there are countries that we should be cutting off. They don't deserve any foreign aid. I don't care what it is. I don't care if they're not behaving like human beings and giving human rights to everybody, then why are we sending them humanitarian aid? I don't get that. Afghanistan, number one, case in point. So how do we divvy it out? How do we do it? Because look, we have a responsibility. We are the 5th richest country in the world, and there's a message here saying we should stop all foreign aid until the UK is in a better position. That 12 billion, I promise you, is not the difference between us being in a better position or not. It really isn't. The reason we're in the mess that we're in is because governments for the last 40, 50 years have failed us. They haven't spent on housing. They haven't bothered with us proletariat. They don't really care. They haven't funded things properly. They haven't done anything properly. And that's why we're in the mess that we're in. The difference, if we put that 12 billion back into the pot, where do you think it would be spent? Do you honestly think that it wouldn't go on some vanity project or some stupid, I don't know what, a pay rise for a union? That's where it would go. They go, oh, train drivers are on strike again. Let's give them the 12 billion, like we did the last time with 10 billion. So that money wouldn't make any difference. I think we've got to get our heads around this. It wouldn't make any difference to the plight that we're in, because it wouldn't be spent properly, because none of our money is spent properly. It's not spent the way we want it spent. And we know that. We all know that, really. 12 billion wouldn't make it. 12 billion, if we got that money back, the winter fuel allowance wouldn't come back for old people. They wouldn't suddenly go, oh, thank goodness. Phew, we got 12 billion now. Right, we're bringing back the winter fuel allowance, everybody. That just wouldn't happen, because that was a political decision. So it wouldn't make any difference. Look at the money that's being wasted at the moment. Literally wasted. Water companies, right? They're private companies. Are they? Because we're paying for not only their mistakes, but in my view, their criminal activity. Borrowing money to give to shareholders. That 12 billion wouldn't change that. It wouldn't bring down our water bills, because it wouldn't stop the greed that is going on in those companies. And every fuel company or every energy company in this country, with tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions of pounds worth of profit. And what do? Our energy prices go up. That 12 billion wouldn't bring down our energy prices. It wouldn't make any difference. Because the problem we have in this country is the same problem they have in America, and that is greed. It's greed. That 12 billion wouldn't even bring down your council tax bill, which is going up. Because again, councils behave like little fiefdoms and they forget that they work for us. They think we work for them and they just put our bills up to cover their mistakes. That 12 billion wouldn't touch the sides, wouldn't make any difference, unfortunately. So for those of you who are thinking, well, if we cut that, we're all right. Think about it logically. Look at the world we live in and the profits these companies are making. Tesco, Sainsbury's, all of them. Massive, the banks, billions of pounds worth of profit. It's greed that is the problem, and ineffectual governments who don't tax those companies properly. So that's what needs to change, not 12 billion. It won't make a dot of difference, I promise you. And you know that. It won't make a jot of difference. Let's talk to, is it Louis or Lewis?
Lewis.
Lewis. Good morning to you, Lewis, in Derby.
Hi, Petrie.
You're a new caller as well. Welcome aboard.
Yeah.
Right, what do you think of this?
I agree with part of what you're saying, but I do think, like you say, we can't trust who controls the money with what part. But I still think they should be going to these countries that we're sending the money to and having some ambassador or someone to say, right, what we're going to use this money for, what we're going to, what does this country need? Instead of just going, like we chuck money to the NHS, we chuck money to the councils, and no one's actually taking responsibility for where it's going.
I agree with that.
It's just disappearing, and no one's back. And then it's just like, it's reflecting the blame. Each government that comes into power, it's like, oh, we've got a black hole. Oh, we need to do this. We need to tighten our belts. Why has it come back to the people, the working class people, that I get, X amount of money each week? I'm a single dad. I work 40 plus hours a week, and I'm living literally week by week.
Yeah.
And
that is a political decision. That is a political decision. I promise you. The reason that we're in poverty in this country is because the rich are not taxed enough. That's basically the truth.
Totally agree. There's always a loophole, isn't there?
There's always a loophole. The bigger you are, the old saying is, if you owe the bank £100, the bank owns you. If you owe the bank £100 million, you own the bank. Right?
Yeah.
And that is what's happening with these big companies. They are able, unlike you and I, on PAYE, we can't negotiate our tax. They can go to the HMRC and say, we're not going to give you that much tax this year. We'll give you this much.
Yeah.
How is that right? How is that right?
It's the fact that when a big company owes money to you, like the council, if you've overpaid something, they're straight on the phone or letters through your
bullying.
Door. If you owe them, that's it. But if we've paid more and they owe us, we have to go through red tape, fight for it. We have to wait 5-6 weeks. It's unreal.
It really is unreal. And this is the problem. And it sounds like I'm being massively socialist, and I'm really not. I believe in a capitalist socialism, if you like. I believe that we pay our money to the government to run public services, and that's what we pay them for, right? They take our tax in order to make our lives easy. That's what it's supposed to be about. But the trouble is that they're not taxing the very rich. All these profits that we're going to see coming in at the end of the quarter, you have a look at them and look how much tax those companies pay on those profits. It is disgusting. It is absolutely vile. And that's why this country is poor. It is not because of £12 billion that goes